thought you were in my posse.
Nope.
We're online.
You gotta work on your posse.
Yeah, find it.
Can.
Yeah, sure. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, good. Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. We call the Policies and Priorities Committee meeting for Monday, February 11th, 2019 to order. Can I get approval of the agenda? Councillor Kirby?
Oh, the council approves the agenda of the Monday, February 11th, 2019 Policies and Priorities Committee meeting as presented.
Seconder? Councillor Norberry? All in favor? Adoption of the minutes, 3.1, Policies and Priorities Committee meeting minutes for January 14th, 2019. Councillor Norberry?
At the Monday, January 14th, 2019 Policies and Priorities Committee meeting minutes be adopted as presented.
Seconder? Councillor Kirby? All in favor? Any business arising from the minutes? Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Coca. I just wanted, since that meeting, Grizzfest was, they put a press release out on the 6th saying that Grizzfest was cancelled. I just want to comment on how I think that this board really went about this in a great way, thanking everybody for all the years of service, volunteers, artists, and thank council for all their support. So, you know, that's not always been the case when funding is cut. So, and it shows really that they're still working on the event. They're looking at some fundraising options and looking forward to 2020. So I think that's very positive.
Totally agree. Any other business arising from the minutes? Carry on. Number 5, petitions, delegations, there is none. Correspondence, we have none. Reports. 7.1, capital projects, fire and protective service building, and district office building envelopes. A report from the acting director of community services and facilities dated February 11th, 2019 to seek approval of the facade, design, and materials approval of building concepts and approval to begin tendering documents. Recommendation. Councillor Kirby?
I'd like to put in an amended recommendation that council approves fire and protective services building facade designs and materials as presented, and that staff prepare a report on the facade designs for the district office using stucco, wood, and existing color schemes that restores the building back to its original design.
Seconder? Councillor Norberry? Discussion. Councillor Howe?
Can I just have that reread again? What is it one of the alternate recommendations that's here, or is it your own?
It's my own.
Okay. Can we just have that reread again?
Sure. So that council approves fire and protective service building facade designs and materials as presented, and that staff prepare a report on the facade designs for the district town hall office using stucco, wood, and existing color schemes that restores the building back to its original design.
Any more discussion? Councillor Norberry?
Yeah, I think that's a great recommendation, Councillor Kirby. You know, with the discussion that was started on Facebook, I think we had a really good cross section of people comment, and you know, I originally wanted to hear what the community had to say, and I think they want our town hall to remain the same. It's iconic, it's picturesque, it's on all the postcards. You know, we should do our very best to keep it, you know, looking as it always has.
Any more discussion? Councillor Howe?
Yeah. So my take on this on this recommendation is, you know, I think we should take it even a step further than what Councillor Kirby has suggested here. So going through the report and reading the recommendations that are within the report, it seems like to me we're putting out a lot of money to do insulation on these buildings. If you look through the reports, there isn't a lot of major structural issues with buildings, and in fact the reports say the opposite. What I read in the reports is I read that the doors, windows, and some small localized repairs would be required. So I'm not in favor at this point of spending the amount of money that we're talking about as a one lump sum. I would prefer to have some type of a further breakdown to explain how much the insulation facade is going to cost as compared to what the costs are of the windows and door replacement or the interior stuff for the fire hall, for instance, like the ducting work and fans in the bays. I mean, those types of things I think should already have been done to help improve it. We're looking at some spends here of upwards of $2.5 million for 2 buildings, and the savings in electricity or heat is minimal. We're talking $5,000. Like that doesn't look like a good trade-off to me. So I will be voting against Councillor Kirby's recommendation at this time, and I'll probably be putting something forward to say that we look for additional costs, a better breakdown of costs. And I thought that I could see the costs in an appendix that was within the report, but I don't see it in the appendix. Maybe I'm reading it wrong.
Mr. Hall, do you have it, that kind of breakdown, or does the district have that kind of breakdown?
I'll have to take a look at, there's a breakdown of costs in here, doing at some level of detail. I'll have to go take a look and see if there's an extra appendix that was not on here. I think if that may be the case, is we were including mostly the designs, as we weren't looking at going that way. But it's certainly something council can take a look at, so I'll have to get back to you.
Any more discussion? Councilor Norbury?
Yeah, I think where our focus really needs to be, we need to get this construction done. You know, like I understand that we want to take a look and you know, where can we cut costs and be cost effective. But I think we need to make sure that this gets pushed through for a 2020 construction period, because it's not just about the cost savings of the heat, it's about the working conditions, I think, of the people that are in this building, the fire hall. I mean, we have so many volunteers over there that are working hard, they're putting in their own personal time, and we need to have proper working conditions for them over there. And I know, you know, I just want to provide them with the best space possible.
Councilor Lehman?
I do, thank you, Councillor Kirkhope. I tend to agree with with Councillor Howe. I think the 1.4, I mean, it's a lot of money. I'm just wondering about, you know, doing windows and doors, and I see the wood siding along the bottom of Town Hall looks like it could definitely use some work. I don't know if I don't like the idea of spending that amount of money. And the other thing is, as far as the fire hall, I hear there's still talk of a building to house the fire department, the RCMP, and emergency services. And if that's the case, that would make even less sense to spend money on the fire hall if that's going to happen in the future.
Councilor Kirby?
Thank you, Councillor Kirkhope. I think, is this one step, are we getting one step closer if we can agree that we like the looks of the fire hall with the facade, the look of that, and that we want to keep Town Hall looking the same? Regardless of what work needs to be done, what we decide on for the actual repairs. But once the repairs are started, that this building remains the same. And the other concept that we like the design. So if staff know that we're okay with those two, then that leaves kind of one less tick off the page down the road.
So I'll get to you right away, Councilor. So my philosophy on this is, I did read some of the posts on Facebook, and I think that's a very few residents and some non-residents making comments. I was in and talked to Mr. Wall today, and I'm wondering, I mean, I know we have a motion on the floor, but I mean, maybe we should be looking at sending it back to staff to go to public consultation until staff's happy with the input from the residents and the direction the residents want to see both buildings. Like I know we did one, and I'm going to ask Mr. Wall, I'm not sure if he researched it today. I know last year we went to an open house, and there was some information gathered back from residents then. And I know I never seen anything come back, but I did talk to Mr. Wall, and he might have some information on that. That's just my thing. Like I read the same things on Facebook. That's a fairly small amount of people giving input, in my opinion. So. Mr. Wall.
So we did do the consultation, I think it was at one of the council open houses, with the original designs, and the feedback we got was not positive. People didn't like them. Mostly what we heard was that people wanted to see dual colors, and mostly dual color with a similar color scheme as what we have right now. And so I think that would be the largest amount of feedback we have. So we went and we took that feedback, and we got what we have on here on this report, but these drawings haven't gone back out to the public at this point. And that's really, I think, council has three very different paths to walk down here. If the decision is to move forward with the stucco and wood, then we can keep the original design. If it's to move forward with the metal cladding, then we can go back out to public consultation until we feel that the public's had a chance to look at this. Do they like it? Do they not? Maybe go to another design, see where that is. Or you've got the third with just the more localized repairs. So those are the three main decision points that I see in front of you right now.
Councillor Howe.
Yeah, so the report that I was referencing is on page 56 of 171. 4.2.5, the order of magnitude cost estimates. And in the first paragraph, it says table 4.2 and table 4.3 below provide estimates for construction and project costs for the rehabilitation work developed in this report and illustrated in more detail in Appendix A. So when I look in Appendix A, there's not a detailed breakdown of costs. It's a detail of what they would do to the building. So if there is an Appendix A or portions of it that are missing, that's what I'd be looking for, Mr. Wall. A couple of points to follow up what we're discussing right now. First of all, I'm not so concerned about what people say on Facebook. It sure is nice to get the flavor of people, but it doesn't beat out the opinions of the professionals that we've paid thousands of dollars to give us a report on what the quality of the building is. I'm not so concerned about the concepts, the new concepts of the buildings, as I am as the actual necessity that we even need to do the project. So the colors of the building don't really mean that much to me at this point. I would like to know the costs of doing stuff that I feel is unnecessary. When you look at some of the language that the report from RDH Building Sciences has put forward, they make such statements as the exterior walls and roof of the building enclosure are generally in sound condition consistent with their age. So why would we change that? There are a few localized areas of water ingress into the roof assemblies associated with water damage and the bottom low point of several of the roof joists that have localized area rot and deterioration. You can fix localized areas. Windows and doors have reached the end of their service life and should be replaced. So that, to me, I'm not debating. You should replace them if that's the professional's opinion. The water membrane of the concrete balcony and hose tower requires renewal. Renew it. But when you are talking about these areas that say, you know, the building's heating system is currently being supplemented by individual space heaters in various rooms. There's other ways to fix that than in insulating the entire building. You know, spending, that's huge costs. You know, installed professional baseboard heaters don't have space heaters. You know, there are other ideas that could be looked at here. And I just feel that we may be, at this point, leaping too far ahead of looking at the color schemes and stuff and not actually discussing the detail of the report to say, do we actually really need to put these panels similar to what's on the walls of the rec center on our buildings and put a giant glass entranceway onto the fire hall for what? For what purpose? What purpose? Glass doesn't insulate well. What is the purpose of that when we're trying to insulate the buildings? The last thing I'd mention in the report is it says the primary focus is on improving the air tightness and thermal performance of the building enclosure. That is not fixing the structural integrity of the building. That is improving air tightness and insulation. That's a lot of money to spend just to have a new look to the building. And I don't think we're at the building's life yet. So when you jump in ahead of a building that was designed to be good for, the roof on this one is 40 to 50 years, and you go and replace it, you're taking away the usable life of that further down the road. You utilize the life as long as you can. Sometimes you got to do a little bit of an upgrade, a larger upgrade, but you run that out as long as you can. Because if you cut it off now, the new roof that you put on, you only get the same thing, 40 or 50 years. If we don't do it now, we get 60 or 65 years. So to me, I think we're just a little bit too far ahead, and I'd like some more cost breakdown before we move ahead with this.
Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Councillor Kukalka. Oh, you've made some good points, Will, for sure. But I think if you're a resident of this community and you're looking at it through a different view, is you're looking at our iconic building, and you know there's a lot of people who might buy something that's a little bit more expensive because they love it. So I think with being a new community, this is our historic building, and I can absolutely see, and it's not just on Facebook. As soon as that first open house that was open, I've talked to a lot of people, and most people don't want to see it changed. So I'll be supporting my own recommendation on this one. And I think we've had enough. I think we've talked this out on previous council on this, that I thought we were moving forward, and that some of these working conditions for staff really needed to be addressed.
Councillor Howe?
So some of the things, the working conditions can be addressed by replacing windows and doors and installing fans and fixing the ducting and heat. I'm not suggesting that we change the color scheme of the town hall. I agree with you that the town hall color scheme I'm happy with right now. But I'm not prepared to replace the entire exterior of the building with any color scheme if the exterior of the building we have right now is not failing, if there's no issues or problems with it. Small localized cracks and stucco can be fixed. That you do that with buildings. So and like based on the report, there's a real weird portion in it there where they've taken an infrared camera and went around and looked at, okay, it's leaking from the doors, but our walls are perfectly solid. They're dry. There's no rot in the walls, based on what the report has told us. There is, however, a lot of heat being lost from the areas around the front of the building where we dug the banks out and put windows in the basement of the building. Perhaps maybe that's what we need to be looking at if we needed to improve the working conditions besides turning up the temperature in here. I don't understand why turning up the temperature is such a bad thing to do. But if you're so worried about the insulation, look at the heat loss that's on the front of the building on those infrared cameras. It hasn't been insulated properly. The earth used to insulate it, and now we've put in a brick facade on the front of the building to make it look nice, but it's done nothing for the insulating factor of the building. It's made it worse.
Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Councillor Kukalka. I'm reading now, I forget. I think my recommendation just states the facade and the look. It doesn't mention anything about it needing to be done, but it needs to, that's just setting what the outside of the buildings will look like, nothing to do with the maintenance, or if we do anything at all, then they stay the same. But if there is work to be done, then this is the way that we should try to make it look at the end of the day.
Councillor Norbury?
My question is, it sounds like we want to maintain the the look of the building. I 100% agree with that. And if Councillor Howe makes some really good points in that the repairs that are essential are localized. My concern comes down to timelines. I also like going out to the public and getting a comprehensive report done, similar to the Parks and Rec master plan. We have an open house, we have places for people to pick up surveys, do stuff online, but I think we also need to make sure that this moves forward at a timely rate, so that this doesn't get put off again another year. It's been put off a few years already. So I'm in favor of asking staff on going to the public, asking them how they feel about the color schemes, see if we can get a breakdown of cost options, versus like having, this is what we need to have good working conditions. We might not need complete renovations to the outside, but the ultimate goal, I think, needs to be, these things need to be on the docket for 2020. That's the priority for me.
Councillor Howe?
And I believe that some of the building repairs need to be on the docket in 2020. I don't believe that what's presented in front of us today needs to be on in 2020. I think it requires some more discussion as a council, and that's why I think we should set it aside tonight. And we need to put, when we're spending $2.5 million, we need to spend more than 10 minutes talking about it, that we like the colors of something. Right? We need to have some really good information on what the costs of the windows are going to be, what the cost of the doors. It's no different when you do the renovations to your home. You don't do the renovations to your home and go to co-op and they say, hey, to do the building's $100,000, pay up and we'll do it for you. Well, what's the color gonna be? I'm concerned about what are you actually doing? What do the cost of the windows cost? You know, if the windows and doors are $800,000 and it's $200,000 to do the insulation on the building and we won't have to worry about it for 35 years, you can sell me on that. But if it's the other way, $200,000 in windows and $800,000 to do something that we don't need to do, you can't sell me. So to me, I need more information, and I can support what Councillor Norbury was talking about, which is cost options from the staff.
Any more discussion? Councillor Lehman?
Thank you, Councillor Kokoga. I again agree with Councillor Howe because I can't see doing work that we don't need to do. If I have no issues again with the windows, doors, and fix wherever the water is an issue, but just to change it for the sake of changing it, I just can't see that. And even at the open house, when it was last year, I couldn't see the reason behind it. So that hasn't changed.
Mr. Oliver, may I ask to have the motion read back out, just so we have it clear?
So the motion right now would be to repair the fire hall with metal cladding, repair the fire hall with the metal cladding and the designs as included in this report. Excuse me. And to repair town hall with the stucco and wood with the existing color scheme.
Is there any more discussion? Okay, so with the recommendation on the floor, all in favor? Okay, all opposed? Defeated. Councillor Howe.
So I'd like to put a recommendation on the floor, but I need help with the wording on it. And the recommendation would be something to the regards of that we sit on this at this point, but we get information back from staff on costs on both buildings, a better cost breakdown of windows and doors and work that is essential to be done. Like I don't really know how to put that forward. It's not one of the alternate recommendations. I don't think what's on here is exactly the direction we want to go. So
Just a motion that says that staff produces a detailed report on repair costs. And if council passes that motion tonight, it'll go to the regular meeting, but if it's included in the Appendix A, which is simply not in here,
Yeah.
I'll send it out if it's something that we need to get a large report of a council meeting. But it'd be good to just pass it here, and then if it's not needed on the agenda, I'll speak with Councillor Howe and he can have it removed.
Councillor Howe.
motion forward that we direct staff to produce a detailed report of the repair costs of both the fire hall and town hall
How about Public Works as well?
and public works, sure.
Seconder. Councillor Lehman. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Seven point two, be the welcome to Tumbler Ridge Highway signage. Report from the Director of Economic Development and Tourism dated February 11th, 2019. To request the council revisit the signage project so administration can begin to develop a more cost-effective design options. Get the recommendation. Councillor Howe.
The council opt to shelve this project indefinitely and repair the existing signs.
Seconder. Councillor Lehman. Discussion. Councillor Kirby.
I'm not for that. I think our signs need to be changed myself.
Number.
I agree. I think we're trying to present ourselves as a new tourist attraction. We're trying to promote ourselves, and I think some new signage is due. I think what we should be doing is, rather than I was witness to the discussion about the signs, and I saw like the price get inflated, and I think moving forward we should just set this is how much we want to spend per sign. And let staff see what they can do. They gave us some really good examples of what we can get for our money. I think we need to step up into the current age and have something that's a great presentation. If somebody comes in Tumbler Ridge, they can see, wow, that is a great sign.
Councillor Howe?
I get clarification from staff that the price tag on the Welcome to Cache Creek sign was in fact $7,000 in 2008 on page 105 of 171.
Mr. Wall?
Page 105, 7,000.
Yeah, at the top of it, it
104.
says Cache Creek sign, 7,000.
That's most likely a typo of 70.
So it's 70,000. Okay.
Yeah, so I can't support that recommendation to shelve this project either. I think, previous council, we debated it, and to me, the prices have just gone up. And I was in to see Mr. Wall, but I went through the report. I mean, you look at Golden Sign, it's $500,000. Like, that's on page 103. That's $500,000 for that sign. Like, I think the signs that were discussed and good debate, some like this one, some didn't like that one. I mean, I don't think the pricing was out there. Like, it wasn't wrong pricing in the market. And I agree with Councillor Kirby and Councillor Norbury that we're projecting ourselves as a tourism committee or a tourism town, and our signs are definitely outdated. I mean, I don't know any of my visitors that have come to visit Tumbler Ridge stop at our sign and take a picture. I honestly don't. I've talked to a lot of my friends in the last week about it, and none of them have pictures of that. But yet, I've gone to other communities, and that's where I stop. If I have, whether it's Golden or Grand Cache or Jasper, I've stopped to take a picture. I think it's time that we update our signs. So I can't support it. Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and I don't think tourists come here to take pictures of our signs. So that's probably why your friends don't do that. Your friends go camping, they go hiking, they go ice fishing, whatever, snowmobiling, whatever they do. They don't come here to look at your tourist information or your Welcome to Tumbler Ridge sign. Bit of the problem that we have in Tumbler Ridge that's unique to any other community is that we have 4 Welcome to Tumbler Ridge signs that we have to fix and replace. There's 1 by Chetwynd and there's 3 around the entrances of Tumbler Ridge. So that inflates our price tag quite a bit. If we were talking about 1 sign for $70,000, 7,000 would have been great. I'd have said, yeah, let's do it. Let's do 4 of them. Let's do 5 of them, whatever we need. Let's build a whole new road to Tumbler Ridge if you had to. But for $70,000 per sign, don't forget that is only the cost to develop the sign. That is not the cost to do the groundwork, the prep work, to then remove the old signs that we have, to dig up all that ground. Do we have to come up with a new agreement with the Ministry of Transportation for where we put these signs? There's a lot of other stuff that goes into it and costs that go into it. These signage that we were quoted last year was almost $250,000 for 3 signs. We go to 4 signs that were over $300,000 and we haven't even installed them. And I still have the stickling of the signs that are coming into Tumbler Ridge that for 40% or for 60% of the time that you come to Tumbler Ridge, there is no light on the highways, be it the winter conditions or in the evening. And we don't have lights on our signs. If we're talking about updating and getting to newer signs and newer areas, our signs should be lit up. There should be some array of solar power on the signs that actually captures what you're going to do. If you're going to go down that road to spend this kind of money, there should be lights on them. There should be some type of way of illuminating the signs, because you're missing 60% of the time that people are on the highway going by your signs that you've spent whatever $400,000 on putting new signs up. To me, there's absolutely no way that I could look at spending that kind of money on these signs. And until I see a better option or a better costing option that's a lit sign, I could be in support that way. Another issue that we haven't discussed or talked about is where the placement of the signs are in relation to power lines. When you put a sign underneath power lines, it comes into some real issues and problems as well. Like there's a lot more to it than just the cost of the signs. So.
I get that point, but I also disagree with you in regards to people stopping to take pictures. I know when we had the delegations here for the Geopark convention, I watched the amount of people that take sign of our visitor center sign. I mean, I think people don't take. Some people don't stop at our signs because really and truly, I don't know if I'd want that on my phone either.
I said they don't come here for the signs, is what I'm saying.
Well, they don't come here for the signs, but when you have it, I mean, when you come a long ways to come and see our Geopark or our hiking trails or rivers or waterfalls, I think it adds to your holiday trip when you plan that trip. Whether it's come see somebody that you know in Tumbler Ridge, or you plan it because of something you've seen. So, any more discussion on the recommendation that's on the floor? Councillor Lehman?
Councillor Cole, thank you. I'm just wondering what kind of budget you're looking at for these signs.
Well, we got a recommendation on the floor, and then, I mean, I don't know if we actually set a budget. I think we set, previous council set a back stop. come forward with ideas. They came forward with 3 or 4 different concepts. There was quite a debate over it. Some of the pricing we weren't sure of on some of the way it was worded, so we sent it back, and then they came, I mean, we picked sign 102 was one of the signs that was talked about, and the cost of that sign is 78,824. So for 3 signs, it's $236,000 on page 102.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a sign, because there's also another sign that was discussed very hard, and that's on page 101. And for 3 of those signs, it's $214,000. And when I look at those 2 options, and then look at Golden's, and they paid $500,000 for that sign.
Why?
Well, I'm telling you, I think we're getting a better bang for what staff have went out and got proposed to us. When I look at Golden Sun, compared to our 2 options. So I don't think a budget was set in a dollar value, Councilor. Councilor Kirby?
Oh, thank you, Councillor Kukulka. The design number 2 on page 101, I think the one that actually Council liked better was the one made out of wood. It was a better lasting sign. I still like the look of that. I think it was brought up the fact that, doing our highway signs. I think if anything, those are maybe the better option is going 2 really nice highway signs, and I might ask through the chair to our ECDev to explain this mapping better on positioning, but maybe you look at the 2 highway signs and maybe come back with a report on how we can revamp the ones that we have right now in town to match our brand, or maybe just get spruce those up a bit. Like I myself, I would like the new ones, but maybe we can look at a cost savings there. Is try to entice that highway traffic in. But just another
So you're talking 2 highway signs, so the one coming in on Dawson, one from Chetwood?
Yeah.
Because right now we don't have one coming out of Dawson.
We used to have a billboard not too far, and I think that's where I couldn't understand that. Trust me, I'm not good at maps.
Yeah, there's none coming in there. Used to be
Yeah.
a billboard on that 1 acreage coming down the hill there before the bridge.
Yeah.
Come walk with the dinosaurs or something? Or
Yeah.
is that the sign you're
Yeah.
talking about? Yeah.
Could we get some explanation on that, just to help through?
Yep.
We have been for years trying to convince them to repair that, because the issue was it kept falling down and
Yeah.
kept falling down and kept falling down, so we told them we're out until you fix it. We've gotten back in touch with that company. For the cost, this is a little bit of an aside, but for the cost it would take them to repair that billboard, they would make that money back in 2 or 3 months. I cannot explain to you why they have refused. they have not moved forward in doing so, but it is still unrepaired, and we're still not up there until they decide to repair it. What happened with it keeps falling down. It's just a bad look for Tumbler Ridge with our advertisement falling over 50% of the time. So if they ever move forward with repairing it, we plan to go back in that spot. But until they do, we're going to stay off.
Councilor Kirby?
Well, there was suggestions on where to put highway signs, and just on the map, if I can get a little clarification on where those spots are, N5, N3.
Yeah, no problem, Councilor.
Mr. Howe.
Sure. So page 107, is that,
Yep.
that's what you're wanting? So, N1, we started by the approach from Dawson Creek.
Okay.
N1 is approximately where the first visitor centre sign is, if you can envisage that.
Okay. So this is all okay. Oh,
You know where I am?
yeah.
Yeah. So if you come around the corner, so you go past the what's the one called? The lookout.
Albert's Point.
Anyway, you're coming in, and on the right hand side, as you go around the corner, roughly where the visitor centre sign is, that's where the first proposed location would be, which is N1. And then as you're just going up the hill, it's a very slight hill, but at the crest of that slope is where N2 is
Okay.
proposed. Just trying to recall if N3 or N4 is the current location of the sign. I can't tell you which if it's N3 or N4, but All of the others are in that rough location, and then N5 is literally just before you turn off, coming down Mackenzie.
Okay, so none of these are where the existing sign is?
Yes, one of them is either N3 or N4.
Okay.
I can't remember which one it
Okay.
is. One of them is in the current location. Then coming from Chetwynd, so you go over the bridge, so you go past the boat launch, over that bridge, and literally just as you go over the bridge, heading towards Tumbler Ridge, it's on the
Okay.
right-hand side. It's a flat area which would be conducive for building that kind of sign. Okay, and from a Ministry of Transportation perspective, that would be compatible as well, I understand.
Okay.
W2 is where the existing sign is.
Okay.
Coming from Canusa Falls in the industrial park, so you just after the turn off, so you got the card lock. So card lock on the right, and then you've got the highway turn off to the right, heading towards Dawson Creek on the right hand side, and literally just after that is location of one of the proposed signs. Again, that would be compatible with the highway, Ministry of Highways. The ground is level, so I don't think it would be a huge issue building it there. I believe there are power lines on the other side of the highway, but you know, we would have to look at. E2 is where the existing sign is.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Wall, I mean, just get clarification when you say the transportation there. So have we asked them about maybe proposed sites and they've given clarification that they're okay with those proposed sites? Mr. Wall?
Yeah, we've talked to them preliminary, and there's no issues with the areas that we've chosen. The big issues, I think, have come was it E2 where the current sign is?
Mm-hmm.
And W2. I think W2 had issues with power lines if we were going to go for one of the tall ones. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so W2 I think is out if we go for sign
two.
design number 3. But that's where we need council to kind of narrow this down for us a little bit. Are we going for the smaller entrance signs, or are we going for the big ones here, or are we going for the big ones out on the highway, and we can narrow down where it's going to be on the numbers here.
Thank you. Any more discussion about the recommendation on the floor? Can we just have that read back to us?
This recommendation is that the project is shelved indefinitely and the current signs are repaired.
No, just before I call a question, when were they repaired last? It wasn't too long ago.
Do you know, Joe? I don't know.
I know they've been. All in favor of the recommendation on the floor? Opposed? Defeated. Okay, so we're still looking to move forward on some idea coming from council for direction to staff. If somebody is looking to put a recommendation on the floor. Councillor Howe?
The council opted to defer the development of the new signage. The council opted to defer the development of the new signage for the current year and repair the existing signs.
Seconder? No seconder on the motion?
Sure.
Let's leave it. Discussion?
So this is an attempt to try to buy us more time, but actually get something done. Perhaps, you know, for a smaller cost, we get something that looks good, and we have more time as a council to discuss the costs. If we're in a rush to get something done right now, this cleans up what we have there. Because again, I don't even know when we would have these signs available. Would we have these done this year? Like, I don't think so. I think you're going to be a whole nother year before you could get at doing these signs. So.
Mr. Wall?
That's correct. The signs won't be done this year.
You're correct on that. Councilor Norbert?
You know, my concerns with repairing up the current signs is the cost that we're going to put into them if we're already going to replace them. You know, we're just throwing good money at bad. You know, so my concern with that is, yeah, what's going to be the cost to fix them up? If it's cheap, it's no big issue. But how much would it cost to fix them up?
Councilor Howe?
Well, then that being said, you know, we don't have the cost on what it would cost to repair it, and that's something we could certainly ask staff for. again, this project is not going to happen this year. We're not in a time crunch to get this done. If we could ask staff perhaps to find out what the costs are to refinish, paint, and straighten the signs back up. You know, maybe they're $5,000 a sign, I don't know, but it at least gets them done in the current budget, and they get cleaned up and ready to go so that we look better now, and it gives this council more time to come up with better solutions for a more cost-effective option. The option you're looking at right now is $400,000, guaranteed.
So just on that, there's also an option to send it back to staff or administration to proceed with the development of new, less costly Welcome to Ridge side designs for the three main entrances of town as well. I'm not into repairing signs that we're looking at replacing. I mean, we say maybe $5,000 a sign. What happens if it's $10,000 a sign? What happens if it's 15? If it's 15, that's 45 grand. And that's half the price of a new sign.
Just, gives you the option to let staff come back to us with a number. That's all I'm saying. Like, I can't guess it, just like you can't guess it.
And I agree. And I mean, instead of doing that, why don't we try to move forward and have them come back with maybe a different costing on signs? I mean, they did supply, a huge difference in some of the signs produced here from the report, whether it's Crestview, whoever. I mean, there is some options there. That's right.
So if you're asking for a cost for staff to come back with new options for new signs, what I'm asking for is to ask staff to come back with a cost to repair the current signs as well. So you're asking for one thing, I can agree with that. If you can agree to find out what the cost is. If it's $1,000 to repaint the signs, would you do it? I would think so, right? I wouldn't even think about it. It would be done. But you know, there's no reason why I couldn't agree with yours if you can't agree with mine.
Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Councillor Koka. I just like to ask the councillors what they think of the designs that are presented. If they like them, or if they are looking at getting new designs, if this was the route we're going to take.
I'll start that off. I like both options. 2 and 3, I know this was a debate before. I honestly think it's time that this community updates its Welcome to Tumbler Ridge signs. I think it's probably 10 years old to not have this done, but I know when you have seven opinions and 7 minds on council, you get 7 different ideas in 7 different directions, which makes sense. I mean, we're all here to think what's best for the community and for people coming into our community. But honestly, I personally, I think even the taxpayers, so some of the people I've talked to, couldn't believe that we didn't make a decision on Welcome to Tumbler Ridge side last year's budget. So honestly, whether we do the blend like we talked about previous, you know, the big one at the chat one, and then the 3 smaller ones. Like, honestly, I'm full in favor of replacing the summer signs at Tumbler Ridge. Councilor Newbury?
I'll talk to 2 points. First, I'll speak to Councillor Kirby's question, and you know, looking at the cost estimates, you know, the signs that were presented at the 71,000 and 73, they look outstanding. I mean, you look at the option B estimate $59,000, and for you know a $12,000 more, you get something that is head turning. You know, people will stop at that and take pictures. You know how amazing it is. But you know, I'd be completely content going down that route of, okay, well, let's put these signs up. But if we need to ask staff to present another report on what it would look like if we spent less, maybe that's what we need to see on how outstanding these signs really could be, or how, you know, what different cost estimates could be. And then having staff asking staff at cost estimates for replacing the sign, I think that's a better option than just to say, let's go fix it. Having a cost estimate makes sense, because we can make a better informed decision at that point if it's just 10 hours of manpower. It's no big issue.
Councilor Lehman?
Thank you, Councillor Koka. I have really no issues with the designs. Maybe it's just that I'm cheap, but you know, you look at the one on page 101, that's 72,000. Then you look at the one for 500 grand. Like, the golden sign is nice, but there's no way in whatever that I would ever pay $500,000 for a sign into this town. And like, okay, you're looking at, by the time we're done, we're going to be 400 grand or more. And that's, it just seems like a lot of money. Maybe it's just, maybe I'm naive, maybe I don't know squat, but to me, that's a lot of money.
I don't disagree, it's a lot of money. I think, like, you know, you look at Golden, like you use their 500,000, they probably have one sign. I mean, our thing is we have some interest within our community, right? Councillor Howe?
Just to answer Councillor Kirby's question, I do like the designs of the sign. I think they're fantastic looking, but they're not $75,000 fantastic looking for me. My additional concern is the construction costs to put them in the ground and then to remove the signs that we already have in place. That adds up costs to this project as well. I don't want us to go down the same path that we went down on the Visitor Information Center, where we were told the building would cost $1.6 or $1.8 million, and then the actual cost of the building comes in at 2.5 because that didn't include the landscaping, the pavement, all the additional stuff that went into it that we weren't told about. So I want you to keep that in mind, that yes, the sign on the back of a truck, not constructed or constructed, is $71,000 or $72,000. But don't forget, there's a lot of additional costs to actually install, put the thing in the ground, right of ways, and then remove the old signage that is there. So that is my answer to your question, what I think of the signs. I think they're nice. But again, $400,000, you can rest assured it's at least that much if we're doing 4 signs. If we're doing the one out by Jetman as well, it's probably closer to $500,000 by the time you take in construction costs. To me, I'd rather see $500,000, which is nearly 50% of the tax dollars that are collected by the residents of Tumbler Ridge in 1 year, spent on something that the residents of Tumbler Ridge could use. This is too much money for a small building. Way too much money.
So just on some of it, I mean, you can see on page 102, halfway down, they kind of have an estimate there in regards to the land work, transportation guidelines, and so on. Works out to be 123,000. So 376,000 total. I believe that's what that's talking about. So it does have, like, you're looking at that
For 3 signs.
for 3 signs. Yeah, and we have a 4th one. And I understand where you're coming from. So. Any more discussion on the recommendation that's on the floor? Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Councillor Kaka. Just when it says opt to shelve the and repair the existing signs. So my concern is that repairing the signs is one thing, but I'd like to see them with our new brand. So that's where I'm kind of, you know, what's the option there? Because fixing it, you just go paint and stuff, but it's still not updating to our branding that we're trying to, you know, follow. That's why I'll be voting against it.
Yeah, actually, I won't be supporting it either. I understand where Councillor Howe's coming from, but unless we amend it or something, I'd like to see. Obviously, I don't disagree with you. Maybe it's $500 to do this, plus put our new branding on there. Sorry, I'm thinking about it. But that's the question, right? And I think that's what scares me again is repairing a sign that possibly we take down in 2020 and put up 4 new signs. So, can we amend this motion, or are we better off to do? Sorry, I know there's lots of discussion.
No, I would just defeat this motion, because the amending motions are meant to change the intent, to modify the intent, not to change it. And I think that the motion right now is to shelve the project. So if you're looking to continue with the project, I would defeat this motion and introduce a new one.
Any more discussion about recommendation on the floor? And everybody's clear what's on the floor? Okay. All in favor of the recommendation? All opposed? Defeated. Does anybody like to put a recommendation on the floor so we can move forward? Staff's report. Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Councillor Kokoka. What is council's thought on, like, to me, I think the highway signage. I think a nice highway sign will do probably more good for us than a billboard over the years, because it's permanent. We're not looking at a company and refixing it. That's just going to be there. So you were going to get the highway traffic. It's just recommending where that should be. So we're getting the traffic from Chetwynd or from Dawson. Should it be before Dawson? Is that, can I get an opinion through Chair to ECDEV?
So I'll give my opinion. I'm not in favor of building another a 5th sign. If that's what you're looking at.
No.
I'm not into that. I've thought maybe as a notice of motion, once regular council meetings come up, is looking at building our own billboard. There's more than just one farmland down there that maybe we can propose to one of the farmers and actually have our own billboard, so there's not a rental fee. there'd be a land fee or something, and maybe there's something that staff can produce a report and maybe discuss that with some landowners within the same area instead of having to wait for a company to fix the sign that has been down for a few years. I'm not into it. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Councillor Kakowka. I'm not looking into building a new one either. I'm talking about our highway sign from Chetwynd, where it says Tumbler Ridge 2 kilometers. That's where I'm thinking of putting something like this, because then you're getting the highway traffic, and then people they're going to see that and they're going to say that's where the geopark is. It doesn't have to, 2 kilometers. Then they're going to look that way, like on the highway coming from Dawson. Maybe we just, I think we can capture the tourism, and then we're promoting. We've been promoting ourselves. I think we've been doing fantastic, and I think putting something out there, if we're going to spend the money, put the money where it's going to, give us the most bang for our buck.
So you're talking about building another sign?
No,
on the
I'm
dust
talking
side?
about one of these sign designs. Say sign design number 3
Yeah,
replaces that Tumbler Ridge sign coming from Chetwynd as an option.
okay.
Not any more signs. Maybe another sign like that on the other highway coming from Dawson. There's 2. And then maybe we just do one of these new ones, and then leave the 2. Then we refurbish the 2 as an iconic, a little taste of the, keeping it with. It's just a
I
discussion
see what you're saying
point.
now,
Yeah.
and like my thing is I would think when people are traveling, and I'm not saying that signs don't get people to turn, but they're also, most people are probably stopping at the Vic Centers in Dawson Creek or Chetwynd. Like, I'm not saying they
Yeah.
are, but again, we're going to build another sign outside our community instead of having one pointing it into our community. Maybe it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I
Maybe
know.
it's not.
Discussion.
Councillor Murray?
So, just to ask Councillor Kirby to clarify, you're suggesting we take our Welcome to Tumbler Ridge signs and turn them more into a Visit Tumbler Ridge sign by the cities themselves?
No, I'm just asking what your thoughts are. This is our time for discussion. What do you think about putting a sign? We get comments all the time. Oh my God, that sign coming from Chetwynd saying Tumbler Ridge 2 kilometers is terrible. Is this too much to put something? Would it be damaged? What are we looking for repairs? I'm just asking the question. Just conversation. This is where it happens.
So like if we decide to do signs, like if we decide to do 3 of these signs, and my thoughts are we would replace the Chetwynd sign as well. So it'd be 4 signs, and I think Councillor Howe mentioned that before, that we got a cost on 3 signs, whether it's option 2 or option 3. That's only for 3. There's still a 4th sign to discuss. And I think that he's made comment of that. And then if you're talking about putting another one on the Dawson side coming in, that would be fine. If we decide to replace the 3 in that. Councillor Howe?
And no, just to add a little bit to what Councillor Kirby is mentioning, it may be a smarter idea to actually put one on the way from Dawson and the one from Chetwynd, and forget about doing any localized in Tumbler Ridge, and forget about the back highway altogether, provided that the back highway doesn't get paved. If the back highway from Grand Prairie gets paved, we may then be in a position where we'd wanted a 3rd sign out there and want it out in that direction or closer to Grand Prairie where they're coming in. That being said, I mean, I have another recommendation that I'd like to throw out. I think this will kind of alleviate and get us moving forward. Let's put the recommendation on the floor that we ask staff to obtain costs to repair to repair the existing signage with an update with current branding ideas, and come up with alternative costs for new options and total costs. So the idea being here is that staff would give us a cost in the near term of what it would cost for them to go out and sand it and paint it or whatever, straighten it, whatever needs to be done. And perhaps they would add a small dinosaur head or something to do with branding out there. Maybe they can add a small section of wood that says Geopark on there. That's your cost to do that. And then they also come back.
Just hang on a second. Let's. Did you get the motion?
No, I didn't.
So we just read it out so she get it done, and then before we get into discussion, we'll second it, and then we'll get into this discussion.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry, you're right. I forgot to get a second. Sorry. We asked staff to obtain costs to repair the existing signage with an update with current branding ideas, and we come up with alternative costs for new options, including total costs.
Sorry, when
Mr.
you,
Wall?
when you say new options from these signs or new options on the entrance, like the smaller entrance signs?
Yes, something similar to what you've produced in the back of it here, like golden and, you know, for, this is what you get for 30 grand, this is what you get for 25, those types of options.
Mr. Wall?
I'll let Councillor, I'll let the motion be seconded.
Second, Mr. Orley, you got that?
I think so.
Okay. Did you want to read it back before we second it? Just to make sure that we're seconding the
Yeah,
right
I can
motion?
read it again. That,
Yeah, just so I make sure we're seconding the right motion.
We ask staff to obtain costs to repair the existing signage with an update with current branding ideas and come up with alternative costs for new options, including total costs.
Seconder, Councillor Lehman, discussion. Mr. Wall?
I was just gonna say, if council wants to go down the path of the entrance signs on town being replaced for a little bit cheaper, and going for the bigger ones on the highway, that is the recommendation here that's in front of you, or that was put forward by staff. And you can, if we wanna go and just replace basically the wood part of these signs, because you won't be able to update the branding with what's there, because it's all carved in wood, right? And getting the coloring changes is not gonna work. But if we want to move forward with just taking basically that wood panel, take it off and replace it with something new, same type of wood that matches branding, you're going to be able to do that for fairly cheap. That's not too expensive, especially because we're likely to be able to utilize the existing base. And then you can look at what the cost would be for, most likely, if you're looking to do these highway signs going on the highway by the Dawson Creek entrance and the Chetwynd entrance, you're going to want to take what we have here on either 2 or 3, and you're going to want to make it a little bit bigger because people are going to be traveling faster. But that, again, is what the recommendation is to do, is to look at the cost of the cheaper entrance signs, which I think are going to be fairly thrifty, and then you can get a cost on the larger signs if you want to go onto the highway. So Councillor Howe's motion incorporates that first part of it, which is finding the costs on the smaller entrance signs, the cheaper entrance signs to town. So council just needs to decide, are you going down that path of let's just do that and leave the ones off on the highway, which is what this motion is, or do you want to do that and plus take a look at what's on the highway? So I'd say that's the decision for council to make at this point.
Yeah, I actually tried mentioning this motion that had it in there. Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and there's a specific reason why I didn't ask for that. That's because that I do not want to look at the signage from Dawson to Chetwynd at this point. I want to know what the costs are to fix the existing signs that we have. And can we add a small portion to the side that somehow, you know, talks of the Geo Park to try to capture the branding. I am not interested in completely rechanging the wood sign and changing it so that it says the Global Geo Park with the block lettering and this. I'm saying simply fix the sign that's there, repaint it, clean it up, straighten it up, and then add a portion to the side that could be possibly made out of wood that has something to do with the Geo Park. I'm just looking for options and ideas to get, you know, again, if this is something we can paint and fix for $5,000 so it's done for this year and it looks good, great. But I also understand where you're coming from. But this is $20,000. It doesn't make sense if you guys are going to replace the signs anyway.
So when you talk in regards to repairing the existing signs, the cost of, are you talking about the highway sign coming in on the Chetwynd as well? Or
Yeah,
just our three locals?
yeah, if it requires it, absolutely. And I don't know the current condition of that one. I've seen the ones around town are quite a bit worse. But I drove by that one last night. I had to go pick my daughter up from a hockey tournament. Drove by at 4 a.m. and I didn't see it. So I don't know what it looks like. It's like.
Any more discussion on recommendation that's on the floor? Okay, see no more discussion? Can we read the recommendation back? Sorry.
That's okay. That's what we asked staff to obtain costs to repair the existing signage with update current branding ideas, and we come up with current branding including cost. Branding options, current branding options to obtain cost. Sorry, I got two of them written together.
No problem.
Yeah.
Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and maybe that wasn't clear. Maybe you're saying the same thing I am, but it was just to come up with alternative costs for new options. So that is new signage similar to what it has been presented in the report. So if you want a concrete sign that looks like this, it's going to cost you $70. If you want this golden sign, it's $500,000. But like different stages of costs here, right?
Yeah.
At this point, I don't think if you're going to do any better than what you've got here for $75,000, but I'm looking for smaller entrance points if we had to do 5 signs.
So just on that, I mean, and again, it's a new council and that's fine, but I believe in the previous council we had that come back, because I think that's what we looked for, was some cheaper signs, and I believe we didn't like it. I could be wrong, Councillor Howe, but so I guess my only thoughts on that is I'd be curious, council's opinion when staff comes back and says, really and truly we can't take that and do this, it means we have to replace that sign with this and this. Like, to me, you're looking for a minor repair, but to me, when they go out and look at it, or bring a company in to look at them and say, no, you can't do it that way, it would have to be this for that to work out. I'm just curious if we're prepared for that to come back too. Like, I know what you're looking for, but I'm just worried that it comes back that, I listened to Mr. Wall just now saying, well, you won't be able to add that, you'll have to do this, so. Councillor Norbert?
Yeah, I mean, I think we already have cost estimates on what our money would get us. We're presented with a, it is an expensive option, but it's also, I think, a great looking option, and we're investing in our community, we're investing in our entrance signs, and if we got something at option B's cost estimate of $59,000, I would say, wow, in comparison, that's 71. It's looking pretty darn good. And I think last council already made a decision, right? Like, it seemed like it went down this path. It was right there, and then now we're bringing it up for discussion again. I think we're sort of splitting off now between let's just repair the old ones versus replacing them. And I think if we're going to put this off until we have our decision point at regular council meeting, that needs to be so. But I don't think we need to ask staff to come back with more options. We have all the options here. We just need to make a decision. And I like replacing the new signs. I think the costs are worth it. I think going down the line and saying, well, let's also have this option of repairing the signs. Like, let's just make a decision. Are we going to make new ones, or stick with the old ones?
Councillor Howe?
So the idea of repairing the signs that are existing is something that will happen now. And that's the idea behind it, because these signs will not be ready for us this year. This will be decided on this year and spent the previous year, and maybe constructed by the end of the construction season in 2020. You might get to look at them in the winter. So that is why I want to bring the idea forward, in case it is a cheap option. Like, if it's cheap, we go for it. I would think we would. If it's $15,000, maybe we're having a different conversation here, right? So, and that's just to get the information. If we get it and we're totally off base, then it's easier to sway me over to your side.
So if I may if I could just ask a question to Mr. Wall. So if this recommendation is passed, what's the likelihood? I'm not sure how you guys are going to do the signs, but whether you bring somebody in or if it's your staff, what's the chance that they go out, they look at this, that you come back with a report and say, yeah, we can do this quick fix. It's going to cost you 20 grand. All 4 signs will be repaired. This is the concept of it. And what's the chance that'll happen with this construction season?
I don't think that would be a big issue. It'll be more complicated if we make changes to the sign to get into branding and to get on branding. I think that's going to be a bridge too far. I think by the time that gets done, you're looking at new signs and new sign costs. But I could be wrong about that. I'll have to find out. But as far as just getting them prepared this summer, I can't see it being a big issue other than the availability of the people to do it. And it may be that someone's able to do it and they can start right in the spring. Maybe they can't. We can find that out. That would be the only thing that I think would hold it up. But if the artist is able to do it, then I don't see how that would be wrong.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Howe?
So the only reason I added the portion about our branding is that Councillor Kirby would like to see. What I'm asking for legitimately is sand it, paint it. That costs $4,000 per sign. If you add a sign on the side of it that looks similar to this with our Geopark branding, that will cost $6,000. If you change the entire sign to have the Geopark sign, we cut it all off and put new wood up there and it's good for 15 years, that will cost this amount. I'm looking for options and ideas to try to find a price point that we are comfortable with fixing the sign this year, or abandoning it altogether and saying it's not going to get fixed this year and we are going after a new one. That is the idea and the intention for staff.
Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, is anybody willing to make a recommendation so we can move this forward, or do we table it? Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Councillor Kirkowka. I think I'd like to see new signage, and I think even just doing the repairs on this is just an extra cost if we're actually really kind of looking to go down the road of change here. Before I make my recommendation, on design number 2, there was a different cost to, after lots of discussion last year, it was a better option to go with the wood. Can I,
Mr. Hall?
That's correct. I'm not 100%. I believe you to be right. Councillor Kirkowka raised that with me earlier today, and I think that we may have just pulled off the pictures that were handy at the time. I'll have to double check. I believe council decision was to go with wood. I don't believe that's going to make a difference in the price you see in front of you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Is that,
Councillor Lehman.
is that wood opposed to metal, or?
So you see that silver beam coming out of the top there?
Yeah,
Metallic beam, not silver. We're not building signs with silver.
yeah.
That would be wood.
Then you have to maintain that all the time, right?
Yeah, the maintain, if you get the proper cedar, it's not as big of an issue. The metal beams can be just as difficult to maintain because if there's a scratch, you've got to make sure you stop corrosion and issues like that.
True enough.
Recommendation, anybody willing to make a recommendation? We table this or whatever we do? Mr. Hall?
No,
Councillor Kirby?
got it.
make the recommendation to change out our existing signage to design number 2 on our 3 entrance signs into Tumbler, but with wood rather than steel.
Okay. Seconder. Councillor Norbury. Discussion, Councillor Howe.
So we're asking to approve something that we don't have the costs on tonight.
Councillor Kirby.
I could amend my recommendation to have staff come back with the best site and costs for replacing our 3 existing entrance sign with design number 2 in wood.
Yeah, I'll mention in a second. So just on that, I think there's quite the recommendation that came from staff, and I've mentioned it before, and give an opportunity. I mean, we'll have a discussion and make a vote. But, I mean, I think staff's put a pretty good recommendation here. And, I mean, it's just my opinion, but Councillor Norbury.
I think we have our cost breakdown already in the background. You know, it's going to cost the 71,000 times 3 plus $123,000 in installation. You know, we sort of have our cost estimates. I would like to make an amendment to that motion to, is this the correct time to do that? Okay.
Mr. Wall. Sorry.
Thank you.
I didn't see that one.
You know, I would like to amend that motion to also include cost estimates on what it would cost to just repair the signage for this year. I think that was a good stop.
Seconder on the amendment? Okay. So just on that, like, I think what we should do instead of trying to amend these, I think we just defeat the motion. But again, I mean, you guys make any motion you want, but again, I think the staff have a fairly good motion marked there, and we can go from there. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Councillor Kirkowka. With all the discussion, I just didn't see that one. I couldn't find it in the paperwork, so I agree with you.
Any more discussion about the recommendation that's on the floor? All in favor of the recommendation on the floor? All opposed? Defeated. So before we get into a recommendation, I know it doesn't state here wood designs. It just says less cost, we welcome Tumbler Ridge sign. Are you talking about number 2 there? Mr. Wall?
No, I'm not. What the recommendation here would be to look at fairly significantly more, much cheaper entrance signs near Tumbler. So basically to take what we have now and replace it with something very similar, a small wooden welcome to Tumbler Ridge in the current branding. So take what we have and replace that. And then when you get out to the highway signs on Tumbler or Dawson Creek and Chetwynd, then you'd be looking at one of these ones scaled up a little bit more. That's what this would be. So significantly cheaper entrance to some of Tumbler Ridge signs at the exits of town, and then the look at making these a little bit bigger and what that would cost for the highways.
With the report coming back.
With the
This was
report,
passed.
this would bring a report back for the costs on those smaller entrance signs plus the bigger directional signs on the highway.
So if we can maybe just add, Councillor Nervy said, I'll get right to you for the recommendation. Maybe I'm looking for Councillor Howe was talking about a cost to repair the signs this year, if it's cheaper. Councillor Kirby.
No. No, I'm done. I'm good.
Maybe I'll put the recommendation on the floor. The council authorize administration to proceed with the development of new, less costly Welcome to Tumbler Ridge signage design for the 3 main entrances of town. And the council requests design and cost option for a larger sign at the intersection of Highway 29 and the Highway of 97 in Chetwynd. I also add that we look at a cost option for repairing the signs for 2019 budget. Seconder? Councillor Kirby. Discussion. Councillor Howe, sorry.
Where are you reading that from?
Page 101. I just added in regards to the repair of the existing signs. And the repair might come back, like you said, cheap enough, and maybe the repair looks good enough and we really are just going to look at spending staff time to come back with a report, and we're actually happy with the repair that they make. You never know. You with that, Councillor?
I'm just reading it here.
Okay, Councillor Kirby?
Great discussion. I think it was good. You know, we went around and around, but I think this is a good, it was the one right at the beginning. Way to go, staff.
Councillor Howe.
Well, and so it should be. I mean,
Yeah,
you're talking
no, it's
about
good,
spending
yeah.
$400,000.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
No,
we should take more than 15 minutes to
exactly.
think it through. And it's been a lot, and we've taken a lot of time on this thing over the past few years. Previous council's decision of what they liked or what they didn't like, things change, right? So, and you are the new sitting council, and if you like it or you don't like it, it's up to you to decide on it. You know, we also have think about this as an incorporation of your entire budget. You know, we have some upcoming things within our budget that are going to possibly cost us more this year than we were anticipating we're going to spend. So we had a $2 million surplus at the beginning of the first budget discussion we had. You know, keep those type of things have to be kept in mind when a council makes a previous decision. So
I don't disagree with you, and that's to me where this P&P is so beneficial in my eyes, is for stuff like this. Right at council meeting, I can just see the debate being less, or let's make a rush decision to get it through, because that can be done there. So, any more discussion about the recommendation that's on the floor? Okay, all in favor of the recommendation on the floor? Carried. Thank you. Uh, 7.3, Parks and Recreation Plan, Community Engagement Summary Report. Report from Acting Director of Community Services and Facilities dated February 11th, 2019, to provide council with Parks and Recreation Plan, Community Engagement Summary Report. The recommendation, I'd like to see this recommendation moves for discussion. Second that, Councilor Norbury. Okay, discussion. And before if council may allow me to, before we get into discussion with council, I was in and talked to Mr. Wall and asked him if tonight he'd be prepared just to give an overview of the report that has come in from the staff side, and maybe hit some of the bullets that he's seen. Mr. Wall?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Howe, and through to council. So we've got this report back, and we've got some good community feedback. So council has the town's wish list of everything under the sun that anybody could possibly want. And it's going to be council's job moving through this process to really whittle that down to what does the community need and what are you willing to fund. So a lot of the recommendations or requests, I won't call them recommendations because they're requests coming out from the community, have to do with, one, things that we don't have and I don't believe are going to see a lot of usage, and two, items that we already have. So the designs that have come here on page 166 as well as 167, 168, a lot of it has this recommendation for a conference center. I would say to council, we have a conference center. I don't see the need for a second conference center. I can understand why the community groups might want one in the belief that the conference center maybe from the district would be free of charge and they wouldn't have to pay for it. That is a lot of pretty precious space to use up in the community center. So I would suggest as you're moving through this, and at this point not really getting into, well, we can move this here, we can move that there, but to make decisions on this higher level at this point, and that higher level being, what do we need more space for? That's really what council has to get moving towards. What do we need more space for? Looking at the usage statistics in here, it looks like the library is well used, the gym is well used, the children's center is well used, and the arena is well used. So what do we need more space for? There are a lot of changes that can be made utilizing the existing building that we have and adding additions onto it. So council, I think at this point needs to make that decision. Again, what do you need more space for, and move forward with that. I think if you are going to go down the path of getting new construction for new uses, you're going to price yourself out of what you want to do fairly quickly. So that's my only maybe advice to council is, if you try and chase down the costs of all the different things that have been requested in this report, you're going to need a new community center, like the existing one plus a new one. If you want to stick with something that's a lot cheaper, I would say here are your decision points for something that utilizes what we have. The library, do you want to extend off of that where it is right now and extend off of it onto the Roman walkway to provide extra space, yes or no? The children's center playground can be pushed down over onto next to the walkway to the pool, and then expand 2 spaces out that way, and then take the gym and expand it out that way. That's probably the easiest solution if you're looking for more space in the library, children's center, and gym. And then you've got the walkway, the walking track here. I would say you don't need to get into too much discussion on the walking track right now. We have engineering funds in the budget once that's passed to see what that upper decking is going to be, and we can also take a look at what the cost of an enclosed walkway would be versus the upper decking there and see how that goes. But if you're looking for that minimal expansion to just improve what we have and what's being requested as the higher, not being requested, but what we have seen as the higher usage areas, I think those are the decisions to make. Do you want more space for the library? Do you want more space for the children's center? Do you want more space for the gym? And after that, is there something else in the community center that you think needs to be added onto it?
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Councillor Kukalka. Yeah, I would think, like for myself, I would say that daycare spaces are really what the community needs most. People aren't moving here because they can't find childcare. So to me, that's the number one priority I would see out of this report. But and then just on other things, it's nice to see that the community is pretty much is happy with what we've got. We're providing them with a lot of services and a lot of options for what they can do with their free time. The walking paths, and we're kind of addressing that this year. It's nice to see that people are attending the festivals and events that we put on in town, that they're still supporting it. It's still number 2 on most of the list. The one thing that I found in the report was the public washrooms, outdoor public washrooms, that I thought, I can see that. When we have, I've been with different groups, touring different groups, and especially when I was with the Taiwanese and other people that come into the community, our outdoor washrooms, especially by flatbed or by the boat launch, or just in general, they could use some work, or maybe just even needing another one in other areas. But that was just something that I never would have thought of.
Councillor Robert?
Yeah, I think the Parks and Rec plan did a great job at highlighting, we should just be focusing on expanding on what's already here, because the space that's allocated to them is not sufficient, right? You look at the daycare with the added, one of the options the daycare took over the gym, they'd be looking at about 4,000 square feet versus, what's currently about 2,800. One of the proposed fitness facilities also about 4,000 square foot, and it comes down to square footages. And our daycare needs more space, our gym needs more space. The recommendation of the walking path is apt. I think we're already going down that route. Expansion on current infrastructure, what made it outgrown what's already there. Making a whole purpose-built facility, maybe too high for cost efficiency.
So yeah, and I was in and talked to Mr. Wall, and obviously that's why I was hoping council let him give a brief report there. So I agree, I think the daycare is important to expand. I also think the gym is also very important to expand, and I've talked to numerous residents even the last few weeks being down at the community center watching hockey, and the amount of people that are using it. And actually I had an older fellow take me in there and show me some of the scenarios that they deal with on a daily basis. And like you said, when if he's in there, sometimes he's got to be careful what he does, because there could be a lady right in front of him, and they could the bumping or whatever. Like you said, you got to be very careful. So I know Mr. Norberry, he's in there as well, and I've seen the same thing. So I did ask on
I've seen him bumping into.
not bumping, but weightlifting. Option B, floor plan. I did ask Mr. Wall about, instead of, there was talk about moving the daycare along the playground part and expanding it that way. So I just had a discussion with him in regards to the daycare taking over the existing weight room. And with the concept, we would be to be able to build an addition on the opposite side of the racquetball courts for a gym. So kind of where there's a walkway right there now, so it'd be on the back side of the pool. And I know right now they have like a barbecue pad out there or something fenced in. That doesn't mean that can't be moved to an opposite door. So that you could actually gain two by building one addition. Now, I'm not sure if that space in the gym is going to be enough space for the daycare. But I know that is, like you said, Councillor Kirby, is a huge thing with people moving into our community. That is an option to have, whether we do have a staff produce a report to make sure that it does justify enough room for the daycare, and it is cost efficient to build on to the opposite side of the racquetball courts for a gym. Just an idea. Anybody else have any more discussion about it? This will come back to
This will come, yeah, this is just the preliminary reports, and where I'm gonna go with it is to develop the administration's recommendations based on a little bit of what's seen and what people are asking for, but mostly what is being used now and how we can move forward. And I think moving forward, especially on the childcare, is important for what you said, but also the provincial government has put out a grant and said they're willing to pay for those expansions. So we may be able to get quite a bit of this paid for as long as we move forward while the provincial government is still stable.
Councillor Howe?
Also, understanding how the childcare center works is important for us as well. Like, I don't have a full understanding of the positions or spots available based on the number of people that are employed there. The way I understand it, like one person can take care of 8 spots of childcare or something along those lines. Having better knowledge of what can be done with the staffing that they have. You have to go down you have to watch what you do here, thinking that we're doing the greatest thing in the world by giving all these extra childcare spaces that they can't accommodate anyhow, whether they would have to hire somebody, now the costs go up, and I don't know, but just having a better idea of what that means. We can understand how weight room works because we run the weight room. Like it's an easier understanding of it, right? So with what Mr. Wall is preparing, it's interesting to have that background as well.
And it might be worth bringing the daycare in as a delegation as well. And
Sure.
ask them those specific questions, or
Sure.
direct specific questions on a report to go to them. But I mean, it doesn't hurt for them to come in as a delegation. Councillor Norberry?
Yeah, I'll speak to Councillor Howe's questions, because I try to attend their meetings regularly, and definitely one of their barriers is space. They would likely need to hire more staff to accommodate more size, but so that's a barrier. Maybe we can have it. I'd be happy to introduce you to Ms. Raylene and we can all have a discussion, but one of the barriers is definitely space currently. If we want to incorporate the need that is expressed by Tumbler Ridge and the people that have come and gone because of a lack of daycare space.
Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Councillor Krokowka. Just talking about the grant that the province has out. Now, Councillor Krokowka's mentioned, adding on a gym to the side of the building. Would it be smarter to maybe add a new daycare or a new childcare facility and just move the gym into the daycare if that's the...
So I can answer, but I was at the
Yeah.
UBCM, and that came up in regards to some of the funding that we were going to have
Yeah.
available, and it was for renovations and new buildings, to add new spaces to a daycare,
Right.
or to early education. I could be wrong in regards to the
Yeah.
renovation part, but my understanding at the UBCM was that would be included in the grant. Mr. Wall?
I would have to take a look. I think what Councillor Kirby is asking is, let's say we decided to just make a minor refurb on the gym and it would accomplish getting the daycare in there, and then the big chunk of money that we spend is on the gym to move it out. And I think what you're asking is, would the province pay for that gym in order to free up space for the childcare center? And I don't know if they would. That's something I have to look into.
No, my question was a new childcare center and put the gym into where the existing childcare center is.
That would be covered. If it's to
the new-
build
it's- yeah, would be
a
the
childcare center,
childcare.
that would be covered. Yes.
Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and I think that's smart thinking in that yeah, if we can get a large portion of this paid off by the federal government, that would be a smarter move to create a new expansion off the building for childcare or a whole new building, because it cuts costs for sure.
Any more discussion? Okay, down to number 8 discussion items. The first one is 8.1, Peace River Regional District Economic Development. A report from the Chief Administrative Officer dated February 11, 2019, to provide Mayor Bertrand with requested guidance on economic development funding projects at the Peace River Regional District. The recommendation? Or a recommendation?
Maybe I'll. Oh, just somebody's ready.
I'll make the recommendation.
Yeah, it was,
Council to review and provide their opinion to Mayor Bertrand on economic development projects that the District of Tumbler Ridge should fund through the Peace River Regional District. Seconder, Councillor Kirby. Mr. Wall?
So, I'm going to explain this in the best way that I can. This has been a very confusing process, not only for me, but for the regional district. So, the regional district had a number of applications that came in for grant or funding from the regional district. It is not clear how the decisions were made to move projects into the grant and aid stream, and how projects ended up in this economic development stream. This economic development stream is a new decision-making model that the regional district has moved forward with. It's a flexible model allowing communities to decide what projects they want to be involved in and what projects they don't want to be involved in. And again, a new twist to this that was different from last year is that it appears that you can make a decision not based on the total cost of the project shared by the willing participants, but solely on how much money you want to contribute to a project. So that's what you see in yellow. It's just, I want to, we're going to contribute 5,000. That's fine. Whereas how it been last year, whoever's involved in the project has to split the cost based on your population with who want to be involved in the project. The report that is in the agenda is already out of date, and you have a new sheet in front of you. One thing I want to make very clear on this is that, Council, you don't actually have any formal decision-making authority on this. This is solely vested with your regional district director, who is Mayor Bertrand, and what he's looking for is Council's opinion so he can go back. And one of the aspects of this is it is very likely that this is going to change by the time Mayor Bertrand gets to his regional district meeting, and it may very well change in the middle of the regional district meeting, and he's going to have to make decisions on the fly. So I know what he was looking for was basically to ask Council if they were comfortable being involved in the projects listed here that he has indicated he wants to be involved with. Now, since the original report, the total contribution from the District of Tumbler Ridge has gone from $35,000 to $115,000, and that has a lot to do with the fact that Fort St. John has pulled their funding from the Geopark and the museum. Now, I believe the intention is that the district, or the Council of Fort St. John, is going to look at making a contribution for the amount that they would have made specifically from their community. I think the question that Dave raised is, why would we fund this through the regional district and have the money come from the regional district when in fact it's coming from the taxpayers of Fort St. John? If we're going to fund that from our taxpayers, our city should get the recognition that is coming from us. And that goes to the next point of how the regional district funding works in these cases. So the regional district sends a requisition amount to the District of Tumbler Ridge every year that we need to collect this much money. And what we do is we just stick that into our class multiplier. So whatever tax rate it is that council sets, we take that amount of money, we stick it into our tax rate multipliers, and it comes through. So as we talked about before, most of the funding from District of Tumbler Ridge comes from heavy industrial and light industrial and utilities. So that would stay the same with the regional district funding. So what we calculated with Ms. Sanders is that about $35,000 in that $35,000 that was originally here was going to result in about a $5 increase in taxes to an average home price in Tumbler Ridge. If your average home price is about $140,000 to $150,000, it'll be about $5 more in your tax bill. But the total amount that you see listed in the Tumbler Ridge column comes from District of Tumbler Ridge taxpayers. That comes from the taxpayers of Tumbler Ridge. It doesn't come from the taxpayers in any other community. Does that make sense? I think there was one more thing I wanted to go over, and I'm happy to answer questions on this. I'll answer as best I can. I just want to point out that the alternative recommendation on this report is actually to ask staff, or to ask myself to work with the regional CAOs to provide a response back to the regional district on this flexible model. I have some pretty big concerns with this flexible model. With this direct taxation available to the residents of Tumbler Ridge with only one person making the decision, which is the director you have going forward, it gives them a fairly large power to set tax rates within our municipality and not be accountable to the residents of Tumbler Ridge, and they're accountable to council. But it just seems like there's a lot of procedural issues with this system that raise concerns and red flags for me moving forward over a long period of time. I'm not saying that anybody right now would be doing something that may be morally questionable, but this system does leave the door open for those things to happen. I'm just going to give one example. Let's say the District of Tumbler Ridge wanted to move forward with a fairly major project, and you didn't want to have to tax the residents of Tumbler Ridge for it. So you decide to kick it over to the regional district. The regional district director says, yes, we're going to fund this entire project from the residents of Tumbler Ridge. Council decides, well, we're going to decrease your taxes, Tumbler Ridge residents, because you don't have to pay for as much anymore. That's great, but when the residents get their tax bill, why is my taxes the same? Because, wow, it's not us, it's the regional district. No, you're just hiding one of your projects in the regional district funding. And that can be, to me, that's one of the concerns I have moving forward with this. So, one of the alternative recommendations is that the regional CAOs get together and provide a feedback to the regional district on this, because while this may be working for the regional district, and I think that's debatable, I don't think it's working for municipalities.
I don't disagree. Thank you, Mr. Wall. So I was going to make a couple comments myself and then open the floor there. So Fort St. John's opted out of everything, and what I heard from Mr. Wall, if they decide that they want to fund the Geo Park and their amount was going to be $10,000, that won't show up in this report. But so we all still pay the extra because they've come out, and then they're going to, I don't know, write a check to the District of Tumbler Ridge for 10 grand?
I don't.
Or how they're opting into that?
I don't think it was 10. I think it was more.
Yeah, I don't know. I just threw a number out there.
I would think that is the process. It wouldn't be written to the District of Tumbler Ridge. I think it would be a direct contribution to those societies.
So that's a thing. So just using that or the museum, like right now with Fort St. John opting out of our museum, and then other communities deciding not to opt in, and some are. Right now, our contribution to the PRD for the Museum Foundation is $92,000, just for the PRD portion. Not anything yet on what we've decided to give them in the grant aid process yet. That's another $92,000 that our local taxpayers pay for. So if to me, like, I'm just looking at the scenario, and that's why I kind of agree with maybe the CAOs getting together and trying to figure that out, is if Fort St. John's portion was $40,000, now they're going to get the $200,000 possibly from the PRD with our amount. I'm not sure the amount that we're going to decide on the grant and aid. That's for $200,000 out. That's $400,000. And then if Fort St. John is opting in on their own to get praise back for their city, which I don't blame them, and they give them another $50,000, their budget is now increased by $50,000. But our taxpayers had to pay an extra $100 grand with the way they're doing it. So, Councilor Norbury?
Yeah, I agree with you because it's almost like we'll be taxing our residents again, but just calling it a different name. So if we're making decisions on our budget, we should do it in our budget rather than slide it into the PRRD funding and tax residents again. Outside of that, I think this new system is flawed. I think that regional CEOs agree should get together and voice their concerns.
Councillor Howe, sorry.
So unfortunately, I don't quite understand how the funding model works here. And so I'd like Mr. Wall, if you could just maybe to explain a little bit more how this actually works. Like we are within the Peace River Regional District, and a portion of your taxes on your tax bill that everyone gets, that portion gets charged to them. And that money all goes to the Peace River Regional District. Of that money, the majority of that money, 60% of that money goes to the hospital that's going to be built for the region. We can't opt out of the hospital, right? You got to put that money into the hospital. We can't change that base amount funding. But some of the numbers we looked at, like in the report, like you said, in 2016, it was 900,000, it was 800,000 in 17, and 800,000 roughly in 2018. Like that amount of taxation is what the Peace River Regional District taxes our residents of Tumbler Ridge.
The assessment in Tumbler Ridge.
Sorry, not just the residents, the whole kit and
That's
caboodle.
correct. Yeah.
And the majority of that is taken care of by the industrial, not so much residential.
Yeah.
Okay, so that being said, the amount that is earmarked here of $115,000, that money is a portion of the $800,000 that we would collect.
That's correct. So the requisition amount here, now I would say take a look at 16, 17, 18. You're about 800,000,
Fair enough.
If you were to approve this, my guess is that 800,000 would go up to that 915. So this is take a look, and this is what you're paying for the hospital, this is what you're paying for garbage, this is what you're paying for the regional district, other regional district services.
Right.
This is completely on top of what you're normally paying here. So this would be $115,000 added to what you see here. If you take the amount out here and you go back to the 35, which is what council was looking at before in the original report, I think you're looking at probably 15 is already covered in here, because that kind of stuff would have been going through last year and the year before.
Sure.
There's already some level of ECDEV funding, so it wouldn't be that much of an increase. But this 115 certainly needs to be added on. Yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Councillor Kokoka. If we were to go with the alternative to have administration work with other regional CAOs, would that be in time? Would you, for Mayor Bertrand? No? Okay.
His meeting's on the 14th.
Yeah.
So just looking at this, I'm just looking like Dawson hasn't, put in to support anything in Tumbler Ridge, and as Fort St. John has pulled themselves out. So my recommendation to Mayor Bertrand would be for ourselves to pull out of the Hockey Canada, and I would also pull out of Dawson Creek and District Exhibition Grounds. Those are two things that are really community orientated to Dawson, where the other ones, like the business directory, business to business, the regional feasibility forestry study, those are all things that I would say I can see why we're in those. And then I would probably just wait and see what other communities do, because maybe Dawson Creek might decide to go in, or Fort St. John might have another number, and then let the mayor decide then and there if he's going to pull out. But he's got to have leeway to make some decisions there for sure. But looking at this right now, those would be the two that I'd pull out of myself.
Councilor Murray?
Yeah, going back to the recommendation as it stands, I would like to highlight the South Peace Health Services Society. That has a direct effect on our Tumbler Ridge residents. I'd like to see us opt into that, because that's the accommodated living for the Dawson Creek Hospital. So the idea is that that's going to be like that 5-bedroom house that people from outside of town can come in and stay at a subsidized rate. You know, so they do need operational funding to keep that going, and that's definitely a direct.
We
We're in
are
it.
opted
It's on
into
there.
it.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, we're opted into
We're
it.
in
I see everyone looking. I'm like, yeah. I'm
It
sorry.
definitely is hard to see the lighting.
Should have brought it.
So,
Yeah. But I think the Hockey Canada is a good thing that we should stay into because it brings people from outside the region into the region, and I think we'll see some residuals from that.
Maybe, if I could suggest something, Mr. Chair, maybe just start at the top with the South Peace Directory, and because this is just opinion, maybe just ask the council, hands up, yes, no, and go through it. That might be the fastest way to find out.
I'll grab Councillor Howe first.
Yeah, so those amounts that are on here aren't that huge to us when you're looking at if $5 increase to your taxes gives you $35,000 to play with, right? To the residents of Tumbler Ridge, where the majority is handled still by the industrial. So for us to go through and debate these at $1,200 and $5,000 and $450, honestly, who cares? If our mayor thinks that those are things that benefit our community, I'm willing to take his opinion on it. There's nothing on here that's a major ticket item besides the geopark as far as, you know, $92,000 is something to think about, but you know, a debate can be made for every instance that's on here that has anything to do with Tumbler Ridge. I just don't understand how that portion, you know, that $92,000. How should we think about that $92,000? Is if we were going to continue with our regular funding that we've done over the forever, $200,000. If they get back to that funding level, it's going to be adjusted, whatever. This is an additional $92,000. How should you think about that? That to me is the more pressing question. Does the Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation collapse? Not happen? That's what we were told. We were told that if we didn't give them the $200,000, there is no Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation. So that to me is more of a concern than us going through and voting on these small ticket items. I think we should just not worry about that. That's really nickel and diamond here. But the thought process behind the geopark is...
In the museum?
The museum, yeah, sorry. Is you look at Fort St. John says we're not supporting anything, right? The whole idea of this project is to say all of these things that are in here is mutually beneficial to all of us to bring them into the area. Fort St. John says, no, we want to give you a check for $10,000 and this is directly from the residents of Fort St. John. Totally understandable, but it doesn't get us anywhere near where we need to be. Vice versa, Fort St. John looks at it and says, well, Tumbler Ridge hasn't supported their own geopark at all. They don't know that in our own funding formula, yeah, we did. We put in, we're looking at an additional $200,000. So it's kind of a weird way to think about it, but without the funding from the regional district, do we have a museum?
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of why I use that one as the example. When I seen it as another $100,000, I mean, I'm just rounding it up, $92,000. Yeah, I looked at the same thing. I did ask Mr. Wallen, maybe he might have had time, but okay. So I actually asked, just off a little bit of talk, because we went through the same scenario last year with the PRD, except for how the things are marked in yellow, and Mr. Wall explained that. That's them saying, I'm not going to support per resident I have or the population I have, but I'm going to support it by $1,000. And it looks like it's all the area B's and E's that are doing that, picking a number, and that's how much you're going to support an item by. But last year, there was lots of media in regards to District of Tumbler Ridge not supporting the museum. I'm pretty sure we all remember that. We actually would have supported the museum, again, the same scenario, through the PRRD. So our taxes, partial of the $795,000, would have helped contribute to the museum. So we didn't get a true number of what we actually supported them in 2018 or 2017 when the money came out of the PRD, because I don't believe in 2017 they did it this way. I know last year they did.
Last year they did, 2017 they did not. And I think just to echo Councillor Howe's point, that how do you think about this? How do you think about handing your mayor $100,000 voucher to walk into the PRRD meeting? And this is where it gets to me into some accountabilities, and I'm not saying anything about Mayor Bertrand specific, and I'll be clear about that. It's just how do you hand one person that size chip decision making? The whole governance structure of a municipality is built around not doing that. And this
Yes.
system has
Open it up.
circumvented it. It's very, and if council does, if council says, you know, we are thinking about doing this $92,357 to the museum on top of the other, shouldn't that be discussed around the council table? And that's where Fort St. John has ended this discussion at, is they've felt that this money, these amounts for them are too large to be discussed through the regional district. I agree that some of the smaller amounts, it's not a big issue, but talking about one item at this amount doesn't make sense to farm out your regulatory and oversight capacity on it.
I totally agree. And I mean, and Councillor Howe brought up a good question. Like, I mean, the ones above it, like you said, small ticket items, and you know, the Geopark, we're supporting them too at $9,737. I know you said there was no funding, but it's the mountain bike, I think. Because you said the Geopark, we're actually supporting the Geopark under this plan through the PRD for $9,737.
And I'll make a comment. I know why we ended up, I think it was the second or third round we got out of the Regional Mountain Bike Association, and that was because by the time everybody else pulled out of it, we could, for the amount we were going to contribute, we could develop a Tumbler Ridge mountain bike strategy for what we were going to contribute for a regional strategy, which we would have to build a Tumbler Ridge strategy after that.
Councillor Howe?
I don't know if I was next, but
I'm not sure.
who's Area B? What's Area B? So for instance, Area B
Karen.
on this is willing to
Charlie Lake.
contribute $101,000 to our Geopark. Sorry, to the Geopark operational funding, right? Like,
Karen Goodings.
Yeah,
Is it
that's
Carrie
Karen
Goodings,
Yeah,
isn't it?
and
Is what?
Charlie Lake.
Yeah, it's that side there. It's Carrie Goodings. That's who the area director is.
oh, yeah, but like, what is the area? Like, why are they willing to put in $100,000 towards it? And
I don't think they are. I think that when Fort St. John left the Geopark, that bumped her funding level up to that amount, and that's again why I think you're going to see changes. Maybe I'm wrong. You know, I'm not giving her any ideas. You know, please do it, right? But
Yeah.
I think realistically, that's going to change by the time it hits, and you can see the other contributions from Area B were those direct fixed amounts. I think the most likely situation you're going to see is that Geopark donation go to that direct fixed amount of whatever the Area B director feels comfortable with, and one of the reasons why that happens, the regional district, the Peace River Regional District, is a very complicated organization, and the directors and how they run their areas is also very complicated and very different from a municipality. The directors of an area directors of an area in the regional district actually have line item control over their budgets, their own budgets, which is very different from municipalities and even very different from other regional districts as well.
So I did have and I'll get to you right away here, Councillor. I did have a discussion with Mayor Bertrand yesterday, just in regards to this, and that's when he pretty much hit the same thing that Mr. Wall said, that come Thursday morning, like these people might all opt out of everything. So you might see Area B opt out of the museum at $53,000 too. Like he said, when Fort St. John opted out, it really opened eyes in the room. People were, pretty much taken back, and people started pulling. Right? Everybody's like, it just seems weird that. I mean, I wasn't at the meeting, so I'm not sure what Ms. Ackerman had said, and I can see why if they're going to donate $100,000 or $80,000 to the museum, well, they're better off to write a check from their own city hall to the Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation and get credit for that to their taxpayers. I can see her thoughts on that. When right now, if she was to opt in, the check would come from the PRD, and they get the praise for donating $200,000 to our Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation, or $125,000 to our Geopark. It's not coming from Coos Coopy or Dawson Creek. It's coming from Peace Regional District. So the museum thing is going to be a big topic. Councilor O'Brien?
Yeah, and that's sort of my issue with it now, is that right now it's basically saying, we need $200,000 for this project. Everyone raises their hand, and okay, now it's going to be split amongst the rest of you. Well, if you look down and say, I'm going to spend $100,000 on something that's not even in my city, well, I'm going to pull out, and it just gets dumped onto the next group. I think, we should be looking at the alternative to the recommendation, because the recommendation now is, well, let's tell Mayor Bertrand what we want. I think what we should tell Mayor Bertrand is that we don't agree with the system because it's a flawed system. We should move to having the regional CEOs review and suggest changes to this funding.
So I almost made both recommendations, like, and doing them together. I'm hoping that somebody will make that recommendation, whether it's myself or somebody else, to have the CAOs get together. The problem with this is it's just doing the alternate. Mr. Walk spoke to Mr. Bertrand, who sits on our PRD, as our representative, is going to have to make these decisions on his own with no direction from us at all. Not that he has to listen to our direction, but he'll have none. So maybe all of a sudden everybody opts out of the museum and there's a $200,000 bill sitting there. Mr. Bertrand decides to stay in the $200,000 bill comes to us. Right? So I think he's looking for clarification, and you know what? We're all good with all the small ticketed items all the way down. I'm sorry, if the museum it's only 2 people in for the museum, or 3 people, we'd like to opt out of that too. And we'll deal with that at our grant and aid part where we, our taxpayer take the credit for if council decides to bump it up. So that's my opinion anyways.
Why would they switch to this?
They did it last year. Last year was the first year we seen it. It was different. Councillor Howe?
Yes, and I could agree with that for sure, and I'll agree with what Councillor Norbury is saying as well, as bring it back to the CAOs. Maybe the portion in this that's not clear to me is that when you would go in the room to lobby the other folks that are in there and to say, hey, we need an additional $200,000 for what we'd like, or the Museum Foundation has come in for an additional $200,000. Us as Tumbler Ridge want to go in and support that in the PRRD. But those folks that are in may not know that the District of Tumbler Ridge has already, for year after year after year, ponied up to $200,000. So we're already in for $200,000. There's an additional $200,000 that we're looking for, and we're looking for you guys to help us with that, to bring people to the region and whatever. So the fact that on this paper, you don't, for the Museum Foundation, you don't even have to show on this one that we support it, because you can come in and say, we do support it for $200,000. Here's your opportunity to support for $200,000. Vice versa with the Geopark. What do we do to support the Geopark at this time? Right? They run the Vic Center for an amount of money. We don't give them $125,000 to run the Geopark. They get a contract run, correct? That's how our funding formula works for them. So same thing. Like, for us to go in and say, yeah, we're going to support for $9,700. Like, almost to me, the company, the group that's looking for that support under this model shouldn't say we're going to put any money in if you already have money in ponied in. Do you know what I'm doing?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So you're saying that, so maybe it'd be clear for me, but so because we already give, or last year, the year before, we gave $200,000, or normally we do, we shouldn't opt in to give the museum any more money from our community. But the Peace, other communities around our Peace should support our museum because it brings people.
Yes.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
But they need to also be aware that the reason why we're not supporting our own or whatever is because we already put $200,000 into it. We're looking to pony the rest of it around here to help us out with it, right?
Yeah. Well, and
it benefits them as well.
And to me, the PRRD is very aware that we contribute $200,000, or have in the past contributed $200,000 in our museum, because when we were having those issues, they were pretty much earmarked the same thing. If you're having issues, then we're going to pull the funding from here too.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the communities that sit on that committee are very aware that we already support the museum, usually at a $200,000. Mr. Wall?
And I agree with what you say there. Or you could go in and this is where it becomes very complicated in the system's work. You go in and say, well, we really want to make sure that we keep Area B at that direct contribution, because she's already said I want to come in at 53.9. Taylor 53.6. I think you're going to lose Taylor there for sure. But maybe the strategy is you tell the mayor, listen, come in at the 92, hold it there. If Taylor leaves, hold it there. And then when it comes to the grant and aid, just say, well, we want to contribute 2. We've already contributed 140 here, so there's 60 left coming. But again, that goes to, is it appropriate oversight to hand one person that card to play, but you can reverse it later if you've already decided that you're going to give the 200 or an amount over what ends up being here. And that's where this whole system is very complicated, because you can play this in a lot of different ways.
See, my only philosophy there is, again, and PRRD is getting the pat on the back for donating $140,000 to the museum, and district, city, town council here get slapped because we only gave them $60,000. That's the only issue I have with that. Councilman Bertrand?
Yeah, I think we should get back to the recommendation on the floor, and that's, what our opinion to Mayor Bertrand is sitting down at the table. I think, speaking directly to that, I think he made great decisions on things that affect Tumbler Ridge, and if he needs some, we should just. I think what he chose is good.
So I actually think the discussion is in regards to the recommendation. That's on the floor. I mean, that's what we're discussing, is the amounts, either we're in or we would like Mr. Bertrand to opt out of something. I think that's what the discussion is, and that's kind of what we're doing. I mean, the discussion on museum at $92,000 is something that should be discussed to see if council wants Mr. Bertrand to stay into that, and if it goes up higher, opt out, or if it goes higher, keep it until it hits $200,000, right? Councillor Howe?
So I actually like the approach that Fort St. John took, that says, you know what, we're gonna pull out of everything, and we'll write you a check from the district of Tumbler Ridge and make you, give our residents something to cheer about or whatever, right? The problem with that is you take something similar to Hockey Canada. Perhaps Hockey Canada that doesn't go because they don't get the $100,000. Just the same as the geopark says we can't do it now, or the museum says we can't do it now because of this portion of their funding is completely gone, right? So I think it is, you know, although Fort St. John went with that strategy, I think it's important that we pony in a little bit to say, yeah, you know what, we're still good with these things here. But, you know, if everybody backs out and pulls out of it, we cannot accept the percentage, you know, so maybe that's better for us just to go and set solid numbers rather than percentages, right? If you're willing to do $5,000, the formula changes because everybody backed out of the Hockey Canada, we're still willing to do $5,000, but we're not going to pony up 15% now because everybody else backed out, right?
And just on that too, talk with Mr. Bertrand, is some of these items, so let's say if everybody was to opt out of something, whether it be the museum or the geopark, it is still something that can go into the regular capital budget or something, or core budget. He said something, and I don't know whether I actually meant to ask Mr. Wall today about that to see if we get clarification.
There is no clarification.
But that's fine, I forgot to ask you.
No, it's just the regional district doesn't know what's going on here. And what Councillor Kirkhope is saying there is that there is a actual grant and aid budget, which is very understandable. Vote up and down. If it's 50% plus one, the whole project goes, everybody contributes. 50% minus one, the project's defeated, nobody contributes. That's the grant and aid. And that's where it got into how did these end up in ECDEV, and how did it not end up in the grant and aid, and how does this all work? But yeah, it gets back to what do you guys want to tell Mayor Bertrand? It sounds to me that all these other ones, council is fine with. It's what do you want to tell him about this contribution from the museum?
Councilor Bear.
Thanks, Council. Mr. Wall, that's what I was getting to. Like, why don't we vote on everything but the museum, and then circle back to it.
Make a recommendation. Well, we actually have a recommendation on the floor. Right, so I mean, I think if you're all fine with that, I think we just discuss where we sit with the museum amount, and if we're good with that, then we obviously just, that's the direction that Mr. Bertrand would take. Am I correct on that? I think there's already a recommendation there.
Yeah, the recommendation that you have is just saying that you're going to provide an opinion. I would suggest that you just defeat that and then do similar to what Councillor Norbury said is, okay, we are good with everything here. Are you good with everything here? Yes or no? And then are you good with the museum? Yes or no?
There's no.
It wasn't seconded? Perfect.
Just wanted to discuss.
Okay, perfect. Then a motion on the floor.
Right, there's no motion on the floor.
What is this?
Excuse me.
Anybody want to do it? Okay, I'll make a motion.
I thought there isn't one on the floor?
There isn't one, I guess it wasn't seconded. So I'll make a recommendation that we give direction to Mayor Bertrand that sits on our PRD for all the amounts from the geopark all the way to the top to South Peace Business Directory, that we're fine with those numbers. Seconder? Councilor Norbury? Any discussion? Councilor Kirby?
I'm fine with these numbers, they stand, but as people pull out, if we opt into things like junior hockey and exhibition grounds, those prices, those numbers could go up. So that's my concern on just those two, is that, you know, do we have a limit that we're gonna spend on this? And that's just my worry, is why those two were my concern.
Yeah. My thing is, I think the recommendation is the numbers that are on the page. I mean, he can still do it, he doesn't have to listen to us anyways. That was what my recommendation is, just for the numbers from the geopark to the top the way the numbers sit today.
Which, my understanding now of this system, which is limited at best, but it appears to me that council can ask Mayor Bertrand to do that, and Mayor Bertrand can say, listen, I'm in all this stuff, none of my numbers change, that's it. If somebody else opts out, here are my numbers, they're not moving. That's my understanding.
That's my understanding too. So like, to me, my concept is from the Geo Park to top, the same numbers you see in front of you. We're giving them direction, again, it's in the background, stuff that, you know, the only way, I mean, he has his own seat there, it's a complete different organization, and he can, if all of a sudden everybody opts out of the Hockey Canada, he can do the whole amount. The only way we can do that, and it spells it right out there, if he doesn't follow direction on behalf of this council, we can remove him as the chair of the PRD. That would have to be a motion or recommendation made by council to council meeting. Is my understanding?
Yes.
Councillor Howe.
So I still don't like the idea that you don't get the recognition from the District of Tumbler Ridge. For instance, the Hockey Canada thing. Why I'm in support of that is I think that there's a possibility that we can bring in one of the junior teams to Tumbler Ridge to do their training for a week, similar to they did with the women's Olympic team came into Tumbler Ridge. We could do that here. If we get on a little earlier, we had discussions with the city of Dawson Creek about doing that, and it would really help us. So I would prefer to actually, if we opted out of absolutely everything in here the same way Fort St. John is doing it, and then you take those, whatever is 15 or 20 things in there, and Mayor Bertrand goes in and says to all of those folks that are in there, you can apply for your funding directly to Tumbler Ridge, and we will look at them on a one-off basis, rather than saying, here's tax A that Tumbler Ridge taxes its residents, and we get credit for it, and here's tax B that the regional district taxes Tumbler Ridge residents on, but we have choice on how much money you get taxed on it. You know, and like,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It gives you the opportunity, to take credit for it directly to the group that's organizing that, and say, hey, here's $5,000 from Tumbler Ridge, rather than it came from the regional district. We're going to give you this $5,000 with the intention that you help us get something out at Tumbler Ridge. Let the guys come out and train out here, or whatever. Same thing with the rodeo grounds too, right? Like, it can be utilized in the similar fashion, right?
So,
Don't do Alabama on the same weekend Grizzfest is. We'll give you $7,000, right? Like,
so like my understanding there, like these people already put in, so the chances of Mr. Bertrand having an opportunity to say to these guys, let's come, you know, apply for it here, it's already done. Like that timeline for them handing in the letters to PRD and stuff.
into Tumbler Ridge is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but our deadline's passed, so unless we want to make a motion that we're gonna open that back up.
Yeah, sorry.
Don't be sorry. But it doesn't mean that we can't set numbers there and do the same thing like Fort St. John's doing. Like we could set these numbers within our budget. Like I didn't have to do a grant and aid. We already know that, and I could be wrong. Mr. Wall slap me if I'm wrong. But if you wanted to support Hockey Canada for $53.60, we could just add that to our budget on our budget meeting on the 19th. We could opt out of it. Recommendation doesn't have to follow it. That we opt out of everything here, but we'll keep those numbers and just put it into our budget, and the taxpayers get credit for it. Be the same aspect that you're mentioning. I just know it's gonna be, you know, long drawn out. That's kind of why I made the recommendation from the Geopark out, and that way we can discuss the museum on its own. If we opt in, it's still at 92,000. We opt in. If it goes any higher, you know, we ask for the chair or the seat that Mayor Bertrand holds at the PRD, that he opts out of it. Councilor Milbury? Any more discussion about the recommendation on the floor? There,
Hasn't been seconded yet.
Councilor Milbury.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I thought I was losing it. Okay, everybody's okay with the recommendation or knows the
Can you
recommendation is?
repeat it?
Yep.
So the recommendation is that council informs Mayor Bertrand to, that you're comfortable with funding in the amounts as presented from the Tumbler Ridge Global Geopark all the way up to the South Peace Business Directory. So all of the amounts there, council is comfortable with, and that the understanding there is that if those amounts go up, council is not comfortable with them.
That makes sense. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation, obviously that left that one out to do on its own. Somebody got an idea? Recommendation? Councilor Howe?
I am, no recommendation, sorry.
Councilor Milbury?
I'll make the recommendation to get the conversation going that we approve Mayor Bertrand to continue to opt in at the Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation funding at 92,000, 3,507, 3,357. Sorry.
Seconder? Councilor Kirby? Discussion? Councillor Howe?
Taxing our residents so that somebody else can write the check to them does not make sense to me. You know, it's our tax money that's going towards it. If we're gonna do $300,000, we're gonna have to do $300,000. But again, this is a decision that other people, that we give them our money, they make the decision that our museum gets to keep going or gets that $92,000. Does not make sense to me in one flare bit of any idea there at all. So that to me is an absolute no-starter. The way that it sits now, and if this, you know, actually pans out that there is no funding from the rest of the regional district on this thing, we have a very, very big problem on our hands. Our $200,000 problem just became a $400,000 problem.
Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Councillor Krokoka. I think staying in, there's a chance that we can have the other two stay in and still have another extra 100,000 from two other communities that support. And if we show that we're willing to stay in, maybe other people will come into it. I don't know. I don't think that the district is going to be looking at not supporting these groups this year, and I don't know how that works. And I know this money that's put in is for basically more so for the PRPRC, the way that it was presented. So I don't know, it's a slippery one. And I think you know, having the option for Mayor Bertrand to know that we support him opting out of everything or opting out of this is still a good way to go. Can you kind of, I don't know. I think we got to stand behind our projects at some point here. There's a lot of, you know, it was a bad year last year, but we have taken the path to carry on. So.
Yeah, so I got myself, then I got Councillor Norbert, and then Howe. So my thoughts are the same thing. I think we need to, you know, and it's tough because Mayor Bertrand's away and it's going to take that to the CAO on our recommendations. But I'm more with Councillor Howe. Like, I mean, if we're going to all of a sudden these other two opt out and it's $200,000, he's got to make a decision. So I mean, like, my thoughts on that is hopefully Mayor Bertrand can talk to all the area directors and the communities and explain to them what the museum brings to this region, as well as our geopark, which we've already approved the thing, but actually get them all to buy back in, and then we stay in. But to me, if it goes in and it's the same way it is there, I think we opt out and have that discussion around our own table, so our taxpayers get the credit if we decide that, you know, we have to do $300,000 or $350 because only one person stays in. And I mean, I think, you know, when this goes back, and I'm assuming that other councils are doing the same thing we are today, Taylor could opt out already. Somebody at Chevron could have opted in tonight. You don't know. So, Councillor Norbert?
Yeah, I mean, very good points. I mean, but I think if we pull out, we're telling everyone we don't support it, and we're going to lose any other potential funding. You know, because why would Area B or Taylor or Fort St. John fund it if we're not willing to? I get that they're not seeing that $200,000 contribution. That's why it's important to stay in at some level. Maybe it's not the $92,000, but maybe we need to just set a set amount to say that we're still in, to show others that, you know, we still support this, so please stand with us and support this, because I believe that the dominoes will fall if we pull out.
Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and I disagree. I think that Mayor Bertrand's job is to go in and represent our community and explain to the Peace River Regional District that the District of Tumbler Ridge already supports this to the tune of $200,000. We need an additional $200,000, and we're asking your support to spread it out. So we are already in for $200,000, except we write the check from the District of Tumbler Ridge instead of from the Peace River Regional District. So I think to me, that's the approach I would like to see our mayor take, is to go in with that. The bit of this that's curious to me is that this says the operational support for the museum and the Dinosaur Discovery Gallery. This does not say to support the Peace River PRPRC, right? That is a distinct difference that has been debated over and over and over again in here, that the $200,000 from the District of Tumbler Ridge went to support the museum and the Dinosaur Discovery Gallery, where the $200,000 from the regional district always went towards the research and paleontology side of things. So now we're talking about putting $400,000 into our museum and nothing into the paleontology side of things. That's the way it reads, that's the way it says.
So the great comments, I had the same thing when I read it, and Councillor Kirby started the process. Or they have this, and maybe they have some other funding already for the PRRC. I don't know. I mean, I can only go with what's in front of me. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Councillor Koka. What, through to Mr. Wall, what was our contributions last year through the PRRD to the Museum Foundation?
I can answer that. I actually came in and asked that question today, and I asked it again tonight there. He wasn't able to get the information and talk to the meeting. Because I did ask the same question.
Yeah, just.
Because that's why I said, like, it would have been nice to know, because,
Historical
like I said,
development.
again, we got told that we didn't fund the museum at all,
Where's
but we did.
Because I remember who contributed, and it was the same amount. So 53, yeah, Fort St. John, Taylor, Tumbler Ridge. There might have been another one in here, so it would have been somewhere between 10 to 15,000.
With all of them last year. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Councillor Koka. Maybe we just say that maybe we just put that number in, if we can put it in like we've always funded. I don't know if that makes any sense, or
I mean, you can keep the number.
No, go ahead.
Sorry.
All of the PPs. No, that, you know, honestly, to be honest, I prefer no PP. I know we're trying to be, you know, I mean, you get out of control, but I mean, this is why this meeting's so important to me, is you get to have that debate with, or not debate, but discussion with staff.
You can go and say, you know, not this, but this, the original amount there, 15,000, and that was before everybody else pulled out. That's something that you, again, based on what has been done by the area directors, where they've put their own amounts in, I don't see why Tumbler Ridge is not allowed to do that. I think you could absolutely do that.
Sense? Any more discussion on what the recommendation that's on the floor? Can you read back the recommendation?
That's to fund for 92,000.
Just want to make sure. Okay, so all in favor to fund the museum at 92,000 through the PRID? All in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Any other motion? Councillor Kirby?
I make the motion to follow with historical contributions to the PRD.
You just
Because I don't know it exactly.
Yeah, no, to advise Mayor Bertrand to follow with the historical funding levels. Yeah.
Seconder? Councillor Lehman?
That's 15.
I think that would be.
Be somewhere in there, right? Any more discussion about the Councillor Howe?
Yeah, no, I'm against that. I would prefer that anything that we're funding comes directly from a check from the district of Tumbler Ridge. You know, sugarcoating it in two different areas doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
It's our money. We're taxing our people on it, so.
And I'm gonna say I feel the same way. I won't support the recommendation. I think if we're gonna have to write a check for another 15,000 or 30,000, and council debates that during grant and aid process, it comes from the taxpayers. It's not a hidden tax through the PRD. How Mr. Wall explained it. So I mean, we could fund a lot of stuff through the PRD, and our taxpayers would not be upset at us.
So
Really and truly is how you explain it. We could fund the building of a gym, weight room, but put it through as a PRD item and then just tax it for the PRD. So I won't support it.
Get mad at us, get mad at them.
Councillor Lehman?
thank you. Councillor Kakama. So now we don't want to put any money towards the museum at all.
The recommendation on the floor right now is for historic level. So about $15,000 last year and the years after before that. My take on it is, again, if we're gonna write, if people start to opt in, and I think it's Mr. Mayor Bertrand's job to sell why they should all opt in to the Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation, what it brings to their community as well, the piece. We already funded, and Councillor Howe's already mentioned, we already give 200,000 from our taxpayers. So if we were to opt out and other people start opting back in, so whether that's Fort St. John, Chatwin, and all these other guys, and they're able to get it back up to $200,000, then that came from the PRD. That came from the region outside of us, realizing what the Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation has done for places like Hudson Hope and Chatwin and Fort St. John. I mean, we have stuff in the airport in Fort St. John. So, Councillor Norberg.
Yeah, no, I agree with you both, but I think we also need to look at what does this really mean to the residents of Tumbler Ridge. At the previous amount of $15,744, which is the current motion, it would mean a $5 increase to their taxes. $5. I think the average resident would say, for $5, if that's going to keep the research side open, because that's what we want. We want to have that distinction for the scientific side. I think they'd be willing to pay that, because that's what we're really asking is $5.
Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and they may be willing to pay for the research side of it, but that's not what this asks for. This is not for the research side of it. They're asking for the same thing that we're funding it for. So unfortunately, that is going to be a bit of an issue there. But also, if you look at the amount that we've already given you is not $5 per resident. It's $200,000 that we've given, and if you say it's $5 based on 15,000, I don't know what's that, 50, 60 bucks, right? Every resident, every taxpayer is paying 60 bucks for the 200,000 that we give already. So to add another 5, yeah, I see where your debate could be had, but then it continues to go up and up and up, right?
So I know we have a recommendation on the floor, but maybe we could, assume Mayor Bertrand contact you. Maybe he can get clarification on that too in his meeting. What they're actually funding, maybe they have it just worded wrong. Not that it makes my difference in my vote, but.
I believe it's worded wrong, and that the funding will go to the Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation, of which the PRPRC is part of.
Okay, so any more discussion? Sorry, Councillor.
I know.
Sorry, I know you probably did have
No,
that
it's okay.
march down.
Thank you, Councillor Koka. If we've always been putting in that amount, we're supporting our community by putting that in. If that's been happening anyway, I don't see the big deal about changing it at this time. I think we got to show the other communities that are a little bit uncertain of what's happening here after last year. I know, talking to 2 mayors, they were waiting on a report from the ministry on just what happened with Deborah Griffiths, and there's, I think that we could stay in for that amount. So that's just my, putting in something. I think it shows good faith that we're behind our own projects.
Okay, Councillor Howe?
So the problem with the historical funding, the way I see it, is that the formula that we had previously has changed. And that is why we're even having this debate at this time anyways. And I think now, myself, in 5th year in council, I understand this process a heck of a lot better than what I understood it previously in the past. And I like the way the Fort St. John has gone ahead and done, to tell you the truth. I like the fact that they want to give their residents the bang for the buck to say that we've given this to you, right? So.
Okay, Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Councillor Koka. The only risk is that we give people the opportunity, and next thing you know, the whole region is left with none of their events, nothing. So, or no support, I shouldn't say not anything. It's a tough call.
It is. I mean, I think we're getting around where we're at. We're just debating the same thing. And if you have something new, Councillor Kirby, I'll take you. But the same. Do you have something new on that? So I think we do support him with that, right? We already give him that, and I think everybody will vote their own way, but we just seem to get. We're all hammering the same thing. So we're just going to call the question. Yep. So the question on the recommendation to approximately $15,000 coming to the PRD for Mayor Bertrand. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Can you move the alternative recommendation?
Yes, I was just about to ask that. Yep. Just wondering if somebody will make the other recommendation as well. Councillor Norberg?
I'll make that council also requests that administration work with other regional CAOs to review and suggest changes to the PRRD flexible funding model for economic development projects.
Seconder? Councillor Kirby? Any discussion? All in favor? 8.2, snow clearing procedure.
Thought we were done.
We have snow?
Sorry?
We have snow?
We have snow, yeah. So my understanding, and I guess I get clarification, I thought we had a snow clearing policy, and we don't. We have a.
We don't have a snow clearing policy. Council has already provided direction for administration to develop a snow clearing policy, which we will. This was requested by Councillor Howe, and I believe Councillor Howe wanted to talk about the ability to hire contractual snow clearing when the district's resources don't allow us to get out there, if we have manpower issues or if there's equipment issues. So maybe I'll turn it over to Councillor Howe.
Yeah, and that is one of many questions. So if you guys are expecting to get out of here soon, I wouldn't expect that if we're gonna go through this and we're gonna go past that 3-hour mark. So I've got about 12 questions here that I'm looking for discussion on and information from staff on. And that was one of them, contractual clearing. So I don't know what the flavor of council is that you're ready to get out of here or what, but.
So if I may, and I'm not trying to get you, I'm getting with this discussion. I'm just asking that I mean, I like the PNP, but I'm hoping just to open up for free discussion, if you're okay with Mr. Wall, including staff. Like if we throw out ideas and whether you want it to be directed to you first and then off to any staff, is that how you prefer? Okay. I just want to get clarification because I know, we have staff in here. I mean, I'm hoping to hear some good discussion and friendly discussions.
Yeah, that's part of the, as well, like the P&P decide things that we're gonna go to the strategic planning thing that we're gonna go to. I think we're gonna lose something.
Yeah, and then we'll see.
So I'll start firing some stuff off here. So I have a question, why the snow is plowed to the, why is the snow not plowed right off the street? Instead of we develop these windrows on either side of the street, depending on sidewalks and whatever. And to me, that robs, some roadway. And now we have tight passing and this and that. What is the idea behind that? Why do we not plow it right off the road? Take 2 cuts with a grader.
So right off the road, what do you mean by that? If I can just so you're saying that when they come down,
there's the sidewalk, there's windrow that we have, then there's the road, then there's a windrow, and then there's a sidewalk.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that? Why do we not just get rid of those windrows entirely and have a wide open sidewalk right across to the street?
Okay, but get away from where on both sides. So instead of having that windrow, plow one onto somebody's lawn or wherever, and then the other one, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Wall.
Mr. Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Wall and council. Well, as you know, we have a lot of sidewalks with curbs, which would mean that we'd have to adjust the elevation on the blades as well. The plow trucks, which do the initial plowing, wouldn't be able to plow right off the sidewalk. So we're talking about a few different issues there. Is it feasible to do? Not with the equipment that we have, just due to the fact that we'd have to do that many more passes. I'm not sure. We do have a right-of-way. So that right-of-way extends, it's 9 meters from the center line of a road, so which extends about 2 meters onto yards. And that's the reason why we snowplow, so we can pinpoint it to that area. If we continue to plow, suggest we're going to continue to plow into those yards because we can only plow so high. So this is just going to continue to push into the yards.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
Yep, no point.
this discussion's gonna go over whatever.
But no, and if
anybody wants to jump in.
Yeah,
put their
this-
hand
yeah,
up, so I'm just gonna keep going here.
Yeah, if we want, that's why I asked clarification before staff goes, because I mean, so when Councillor Howe has got some questions here or some ideas, and somebody has questions, if whether we go to staff first or to us first, and then that's fine, right? Again, I want to have a good discussion about it. Councillor Miller.
My question is if Councillor Howe, if there's quite a list of questions and if they require detailed explanation, wouldn't it make sense to put those questions to staff, allow them to prepare a report and have them come back to us?
Yeah, perhaps. But I'd prefer to hear everybody else's opinion as well, right? And maybe those certain things that we talk about can be, no, don't worry about that. And this is also public forum as well, rather than an email that's behind the scenes that nobody sees. Like this is, right now, deal with it, it's in front of us. There's been, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, there's been a lot of concern previous 2 weeks about folks in Tumbler Ridge that our snow clearing procedure recently is not up to what we are accustomed to. I think we get fantastic snow clearing, and I know we'll hear that 10 or 15 times today that we get fantastic snow clearing. It's just whatever has happened in the past 2 weeks has really triggered people to say, what can we do to fix it? How can we change our policies and procedures to change it, to make sure that it's done correctly? And that's why people have the questions, and I'd like to fire them out there. I mean, if you guys would rather I don't do that and put it in a report, let me know.
See, and I'll be honest, I like this. I mean, I have some comments of my own and I'll wait, but I think it gets discussed around council. And that's why I say not constantly we'll go to staff. We do have amazing snow removal, but I think it's good, and that way we have input. To me, we send it to staff, come back with a report, comes back with a report, and then all of a sudden we have a whole bunch more questions for the report. I think it gives staff, Mr. Wall, an idea too that, I think there's something coming or a policy that they're gonna be working on, and I think this is, all of a sudden he gets 5 heads and all going, hey, this kind of sounds kind of right, and, once Mr. Wall talks with his staff, and he says, geez, that's easy done, but we never even thought to do it this way, I think it's a benefit. My opinion, I mean, we can vote on it if that's council wish.
And
Question two.
sorry?
I have a question too.
Okay, and so the current way that the road is cleared off like that, leaving the windrow or whatever, Mr. Beal, you made mention that it's, with the equipment that we have, is there any way, could we add a wing or something to our plow trucks so that we could wing that snow off? The reason being is the way that we have it laid out now, we knock it to the sides of the road, then we come through with the snow blower and put it on the roads. Works great in theory when it works, but the snow blowers have not been out in my area of Tumbler Ridge since January. So like where, is there a way that we can get something more for you to make that easier?
Mr. Wall?
So, yeah, if we can just, and I think
Sorry,
that's,
Mr.
and I think,
Sorry.
I apologize to Mr. Beal for myself. I think if we can just, I'm fine going directly to Mr. Wall.
Yeah.
And I think that way, I think
Okay.
staff's more
Sorry.
comfortable
Sorry.
with the procedure. Sorry about that.
Thank you, and because I'm not prepared for the questions that Councillor Howe has, I'm just going to do my best at trying to answer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors that go into our snow clearing, and the biggest factor is weather. So whatever weather events that we have, and as you know, in this past month, we've had freeze-thaw events on top of snow events, freeze-thaw events on top of snow events. Those are much more difficult to control and get a handle on, because when we have a snow event, most of our equipment's out taking care of that accumulations. So by the time we take care of those accumulations, then we have to come back and start over again. So we don't get to the snow clearance in regards to the snow blower.
Gotcha.
Another thing you gotta consider, once again, there's 2 different levels from a curb. So that means that we'd have to lift the blade, and even with the wing, that wing's coming down the same level as the blade. But you're talking about damage, potential damage to yards, which we already do with the small sidewalk machine, and I hear those complaints every spring. But we're also talking damage to the concrete. Because as you know, there's different levels of concrete, sidewalks are lifted, we hit that with a blade, we just ripped out a section of concrete. So to wing it right to the edge and onto boulevards or the right-of-ways, it's going to be difficult at best. Plus we have street lights. Street lights are sometimes planted in the sidewalks or close to it, which means we wouldn't be able to do a complete windrow. Windrow to the curb works the best, where we still have be able to maintain the sidewalks to a safe level and be able to have enough width on the road. And as you mentioned, as they accumulate, our roads start to narrow, and then we get out to snow.
Okay.
So this one day, and to Mr. Wall, if I made it through to Mr. Beal, thank you very much. I know you're being put on it, and like you've already answered it, you'll do the best to answer it, and I appreciate that. I just have a question, so kind of the same concept. So I'm going to use my street, but I'm not saying to do it there. But we, as a community, and I know maybe you were here before. I know when I first came to town, I believe you worked for Public Works. Have we ever looked at plowing the snow more to the inside of a residential area that has no sidewalk, than more of the snow going to the sidewalk side? Is that ever? So I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think, and I'm not going to say piecework, but I've seen it on other streets. Birch Ave, I see the same thing. Majority of the snow seems to end up on the sidewalk side, and less on the non-sidewalk side. And then when we get to melt, you get the berm in there with the pond. I mean, which is understandable with the berm. Has it ever been tried to plow majority of the snow? So whether the grade comes down a different way or it has to angle this blade, I'm not an operator, so to have more of the snow go onto that non-sidewalk side to be more safety on our sidewalks?
Mr. Wall, Council, yeah, so to do that, number one is a private property that we're plowing snow off to, which is going to get double the accumulations in the neighborhood. The other thing is we'd have to close down the road, because then now we have to shift and put a berm right in the middle of the road until we can get it all the way over to the other side. So we'd have to shut down traffic, so we'd have to have traffic control. We do, on occasion, in green belts, green areas, we'll blow across the road, because we can actually blow. But to plow it over to the sides, I would be a little bit more.
Yeah, so again, I'm not saying all of it, and maybe that, I'm not saying all, I just say it just seems, and I've heard it from residents, and I mean, I'm talking about Birch because I have some people have contacted me lately, and you can almost see majority of the snow is on the sidewalk side, so I'm not sure which way the grader goes down. I don't go around and follow the grader operator. It seems like if there's a sidewalk, majority, so whether they're going down this way instead of coming this way, I'm not sure. But they don't shut the road down when they're doing that, but the majority of the snow ends up onto the sidewalk side. I mean, there is some, don't get me wrong, there's snow that goes onto the non-sidewalk side. Maybe it's a 70-30, maybe it's a 60-40, I don't know. I'm definitely not gonna go out there and measure it.
Yeah.
Just curious if there's, if right now, and I mean, maybe that'll come in the pulse and there'll be discussion about that, but maybe if we're going down right now, we're going east to west or north to south on Birch, or these sidewalk, they only have one sidewalk, maybe it's the option of coming in the other way.
So I'm not sure if it is an operational requirement on how they blade to a sidewalk side. I'd have to take a look and discuss that with my crew. But you're right, if there's an opportunity to swing the blade to a non-sidewalk side, we certainly can do that. I can tell you that when we're doing snow clearing operations, it's not at 2 kilometers an hour. We have to wing the snow to get it to the side, especially for the initial trucks, the plow trucks. But it certainly is something that I can certainly look into.
I appreciate it. And it might be because of the way, like you said, the first truck out is our sand truck or the plow truck, and maybe that's what happens, right? Because of, obviously different blades, and maybe that's the reasoning for it. Nothing, and that's fine. It's a question. I appreciate the answer. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you. I think part of that though too is they're plowing towards the sidewalk, and then the little plow truck plows from the sidewalk into that same berm. I think that's probably why you're also getting a higher level on that side.
Maybe, yeah.
Because that little plow truck plows that way. It's plowing on top of that. So you're getting from both sides, and that's why you're getting more on that side.
It could be 100% true. Yeah, and that's what I say. I'm not out there to, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Even on my street, I think we do an amazing job. I mean, we have bylaws at state. We also have to clean our own sidewalks off. And this is a service that council has added into the budget with direction from staff or whatever for years and years. So I've only been here 11 and a half years, and I was surprised when I first moved here and you didn't have to shovel your sidewalk. I mean, I do, but you don't have to, it seems like, right? So, I mean, I think on that aspect of it, we get it pretty easy at Dublin. Mr. Howe, or Councillor Howe?
So do we have a trigger point, Mr. Wall, at which when our units go to work? And that means like the grader, the plow truck, the sander, the sidewalk cleaner, the snow blower. Like, do we say, yeah, we've got freezing rain, so that's the trigger point for the sander to go out? Or do we say, yeah, we've had 15 centimeters of snow? Is there a set? No trigger points yet.
There's no standard operating procedures on that, and that'll be part of what comes back in this policy.
Okay. What equipment could we add to assist the staff in improving our snow removal?
It just depends on what service level you want, really. If there is, I'd have to talk to Mr. Beal, and we could come up with equipment that I'm sure could help. But it really would just come down to what service improvements are you looking at. If there's issues with the past couple of weeks, we know that we have issues right now because we're down operators. We're trying to train new operators and catch up on that. If the only issue that council's seeing is that there's been a dip in service in the past little while here, it's something administration is aware of. But if it's looking at an improvement in service delivery versus the historical precedent, then that's something we'd have to look at the type of equipment we would need to do that.
Yeah, and that's why I just like if there is something that you can add an attachment to the loader or an attachment to the sidewalk cleaner. Somebody had mentioned to me add a snow blower to the sidewalk cleaner instead of pushing it into that windrow. They could be going by and blowing it onto the yards. Again, I don't know if you have to have somebody in front of that vehicle for protections or whatever, but that would be something back to you. And I know you can't fix that tonight, but
I know the answer to that one is that we did try that with the sidewalk machine, but the problem was it didn't clean it well enough and it left it very bumpy, and it wasn't. It was better to do it the way we were doing than to leave the street as uneven as that attachment left it.
Okay.
Now, having said that, in your fleet replacement policy, we are looking at replacing that piece of machinery in the near future, and they may have improved the capabilities, and that's something we can take a look at that time.
Are there any specific bylaws we could look at that we could change for help clearing the snow more effectively. I know previous council, we pushed the idea of the road signage to clear the vehicles from the street, and we looked at how we would tow vehicles off of the street in a more timely fashion to help the public works guys out. Is there anything else that you can think of?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on how, I guess strict maybe the word would be, but it depends on how strict council wants to be. I mean, you can make bylaws that you can't park on the street in the winter at all, and that would make snow clearing much easier. So if it snows, we're gonna go out, and if you happen to be out there, it's gonna be ticketed. But that would just be something, does council want to go with that with the residents and say you can't park on the street? I mean, you can see Tumbler Ridge, our houses weren't really designed for a lot of the equipment that people have these days.
Yep.
But if you want to go down that path, it's certainly a direction we could go.
Okay. Can you?
And having said that, we'll talk about those sorts of things, about if there's equipment, and when we're bringing the snow clearing policy, is there ways that we can improve it? Is there things that staff want to do? And we'll bring that into the snow clearing policy. So don't, just because I'm telling you right now,
Yep.
nothing off the top.
Something might come. Yep. Gotcha. Can you explain the priority sequence for clearing snow in town? So I think I know what it is, but I'd like to hear it from the horse.
I'm gonna get Mr. Beal because I'll get it wrong.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Wall, Council. So normally, we don't start clearing until we get about 5 and 10 centimeters. And we'll start with the main arterials, which are like Monkman, Mackenzie, Northgate, Southgate, Bertrand. The collectors, which are like Willow, Fellers, and then we get into the residentials. So that's the order that we do. So depending on the snow events, when we get into the residentials, might be a little bit more untimely because of the snow. We have to go back and do the arterial sequence.
Gotcha. Okay. Mr. Wall, what's the procedure for dispatching snow clearing operators after hours and weekends and holidays? And how does the call out work and the pay for operators? Can that be discussed?
By procedure or triggers, do you mean? The procedure is Mr. Beal, as Director of Infrastructure and Operations, would make the decision to bring someone out. As far as who gets the call out, it's based on the union agreement. So we follow the agreement there. Mr. Beal might have a better idea of it, but I think a lot of that's left to the union agreement and the foreman and the equipment operators that we have on hand.
And like are all the equipment operators able to be, like, in a union environment you have 10 employees, the way I understand it, and are all 10 employees able to run all the equipment? And so if there's a guy that's on call that only can run a hand shovel, if he's on call and he can't really do anything, can they call above him? Can they say, okay, the dude with the shovel's got to come in, but we also got to get the grader guy in? Like,
yeah, when you're calling somebody in, you're usually calling them in for specific work, so you wouldn't have to, like, let's say you need somebody to come in and operate a piece of heavy equipment, and the person who's on call isn't a heavy equipment operator. You don't have to call them in and call someone else, and you call someone in who can do the job.
okay.
The issue that we've just been having again is our equipment operators have been out, and we're in the process of training people on the machinery. Because even if you have your ticket to do the heavy equipment and you're not practiced on the machinery and you haven't been trained on the machinery, we're not going to send you out on the streets to learn on the job.
Just hang on a second, Councilor.
Yep.
Councilor Norbury?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the first part of that, and is that the current procedure of calling out at between 5 to 10 centimeters, is that still take place after hours and holidays?
So right now, and what Mr. Beal is saying is he's basically giving you his decision points and what he's making. The district does not have a policy or standard operating procedure on when that's happening. So most of it right now is being left to Mr. Beal's discretion and historical input he's got. And I can say that Mr. Beal is a resident of this community, and when snow is left on the streets and it's not plowed, he hears it just as loud as anybody else. So he's made his decisions based on that feedback, based on what he's heard from council, and based on what he thinks is cost effective. But having said that, I think that if I haven't acknowledged, I'll acknowledge it now, is that we do need a snow clearing policy. We need a snow clearing policy that has specific triggers for different weather events and what we're going to do. On a step below that, outside of that council mandated service level, we need to internally develop standard operating procedures on where we're going to go, how it's going to be dealt with. And it's one of the last issues that was identified in the core service review to get done. And we're on track to do it from when we said we were going to. And this addition of the snow clearing policy is something that I think is long overdue for Tumbler Ridge. And I've heard what council said, and it's basically, you guys are getting a ton of questions all the time, and you don't have anything to point to, like that map you brought, or the brochure you brought from Grand Prairie. And the development of this policy will let the residents know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and it'll also give council the ability to do it rather than having to ask staff to answer the questions all the time. We can put the snow clearing policy online. Most communities, you don't put all your policies online, it's too much, but what are the frequently asked for policies, and snow clearing would be one of those. So.
And so the way I understand it, something happened in the last couple of weeks through our discussions is that we didn't have enough operators that were able to operate the equipment due to whatever was happening in their personal lives, and sickness and injury, whatever. Has nothing to do with us. When that occurs, which seems to be unlikely to me, or not very often, are we able to, within the current policies that we have right now, dispatch, and do we have anybody that's contracted to help us do that type of road clearing? Can we use a contractor to help us get our road clearing done?
We can. We have our snow clearing budget, so I would be authorized, and I could authorize Mr. Beal. He could authorize it himself to bring in the contract. And I think there have been occasions where they have come in and done part of our roads before. The issue that we make the decision on is they're not going to provide the same level of service that you get when we do a different equipment. They're not going to be worrying about sidewalks and driveways. The people that we do get in aren't going to be used to the nuances of our streets, going around the cars, where the curbs are, and all those sorts of things. So you bring additional risk when you bring those contractors in, and they're not going to be paying for the damage that they do. Like if they mess up one of our sidewalks, if they mess up some of our streets, they're not going to pay for those damages. So
insurance would, wouldn't it?
What's that?
Their insurance would, wouldn't it?
It may or may not, but they're not going to come in with that liability. Like, there's a bunch of snow here, and I didn't know that there was a curb. I didn't know there was a fire hydrant. And they're not going to take that liability on themselves. So it can be done, and I think there has been instances where it's been done before. But for the most part, I think the decision that we've been making is that it's better to have the slower service and have it done internally than go to that external fact, because of those factors, is that there's more risk in bringing people in to operate on our streets. So can be done. Certainly a service level that council can request. There is equipment that can do it, but at the same time, the availability of equipment is something I wonder about, because the people who have that machinery specifically to do snow clearing are likely out clearing snow when we're going to need them, and there is going to be there may be some excess capacity somewhere to use it, but is it going to be worth the value of not just waiting till we're able to get around to it? And that's the discussion. But again, council can say, listen, if you guys aren't able to do this, and you can have it in that policy too, if you're not able to get to this in the time frame that you've allotted here, and you're 20% over your time, then we want you guys to bring in some contractors to do it.
And I realize they all don't have the driveway gate on their graders and that. But I mean, if you go up Murray Drive right now, the windrows that are in front of people's driveway on Willow are huge. Like, they can't get out of their driveways. They backed in and over them, and it's really not the level of snow clearing that we're accustomed to at Tumbler Ridge. I understand we've had, all the circumstances that have occurred, the cold weather and the operators and the weather events that have happened. But when we do get those oddities that happen, it sure would be nice to be able for Mr. Beal to know that he has that opportunity to say, yeah, let's dispatch those guys and at least bang that road off, and that loop, or main arterial loop, is taken care of, right? And to me, I think we need to have that in place. I think we need to give our staff that, ability to make that call.
And that comes.
Well, they have that right now, though, right? Like, they have it. I mean, my understanding, you have it. It's just the other concept, and just to you, is, you know, if you put that thing in there where, you know, you got, you know, they're behind or whatever, they get, you know, 3 feet of snow and they can't make this, you know, it's in our policy that it's an automatic, they call in the extra help.
Yeah, and that's, I think, is the way to go about it too. The same thing, I don't think that our service level right now, being left to the discretion of staff, is the right way it should be. And I think that too, that service level of having, if there's delays when you bring in that extra contractors, let's build that policy and get council comfortable with it. If council wants to say, listen, if it's gonna be a couple days, it's gonna suck, that's life. Or, you know, in these instances, let's bring somebody in and see if we can help. And then we'll try to bring someone, and we may or may not be able to. It'll depend on the availability of contractors at the time.
Mr. Up?
Yeah, and then like, you know, we bought those new plow trucks and sand trucks with the idea of improving our fleet. They were newer equipment, they wouldn't be down as much, we could utilize them a lot. That's what I see on the roads right now, is I see our sand trucks out there quite steady. They're doing a very good job of sanding, but the reason we're having to put all this sand down is because we didn't remove the snow that was there. And that's what it looks like on the surface, and that's what you hear from the residents in town at this time. And, you know, why? Is that because we didn't put enough additional grader on? We didn't have an additional grader operator? Whatever it is, like, again, I just want to be able, you guys to have the ability or the decision from council to say, we're good with that. You know, like, don't hold back because you think it's going to cost $5,000 to clear the snow this weekend, right? Like, I would rather spend the $5,000 than listen and field the complaints that we get and then go out and waste tons and tons of sand on the roads. So.
So just on that, when you bring it up in regards to costing of snow removal, I'm just curious, Mr. Wall, have we ever went over our snow removal budget in the last 10 years?
Mr. Wall, council, no, we have not. I'd just like to mention, we will be up in Upper Bench here, starting probably tomorrow. We have been, like I said, behind due to manpower issues, equipment issues. Cold weather didn't help as well, so we're a little behind on that. To me, this is an anomaly. Since I've been sitting in this position, I think the snow clearing for the past 6 years has been relatively good and steady. It's just that, I'm not sure what you call it, it's just everything rained down all at once.
So I got Councilor Norberry after me. I just want to make sure it's very clear, Mr. Wall, through to Mr. Beal, if I may, and to your staff. Hats off. Like, I mean, we get I get the concept, and don't take me wrong. I mean, you can't control the cold weather. You can't control any staffing concerns you may or may not have and stuff like that. I just want to say hats off. I rode in the truck before I became a councillor with you, and couldn't believe some of the stuff you guys hear. Council should know, you know, I mean, I'm not saying the type of stuff, but you get that opportunity. It is something else. I believe we were going through the trailer park, and that's an extra that the district actually does. And I mean, the plow was turning around to go do a second pass, and somebody was already freaking out. Like, it was just, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I've seen shovels thrown at the operators. I couldn't believe it. I've seen it this year already. So, hats off to your crew and to yourself, Mr. Wilkerson.
Thank you.
Councilmember.
Yeah, and I think with policy that's going to be coming back to us, the idea would be to give, you know, our public works the opportunity for us to say, hey, we want a high level of service. I think that's what we all want. Like, our community wants a high level of service. We want snow removal, so we can give them the freedom to call in what's needed to get the job done. And that's, you know, all my questions and, you know, listening to yours, that's what it all boils down to, is that this is important for our community. And through this policy, we want to give freedom to make the decisions to give a high level of service. You know, and thanks for doing Steve brought Trailer Park, because it's added to.
That's coming back to you.
Yeah, I was going to say this is coming up, just so you all know. Councillor Howe.
And so, like, we've done things to improve the services over the years and continue to help staff in making our decisions in council. One of those things was to purchase the sand pit, the gravel pit. So I'm just curious, are we utilizing that now to its full capacity? Do we go get gravel crushed and that's where we get our gravel from? Is that what's...
I believe we ran this year, or was it delayed?
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Council, no, we screened 5,000 cubic meters last year, which we're using. And because of the storage shed, the sand, as you can see, is being spread much more effectively. As before, when it was out in the open, it would be very clumpy and narrow. So it is working out. 5,000 cubic meters that we screened last year, I estimate should last us 3 to 4 years before we have to screen again.
And with that increase, do you remember how much money that was going to save us instead of buying from the contractors?
I don't have that off.
Yeah.
It's substantial.
Yeah.
So I just have one there, Mr. Wall, maybe to Mr. Beal if I may, and you might be able to answer too. So when we have this cold temperature, the minus 38s, the minus 35s, the 40s, or whatever it is, when do we stop putting sand down because it does no good? Is there like, I mean, and maybe it's an off question you can't answer, but I know I've heard it out there, and I'm not saying from the district of Tumbler Ridge, but it becomes a temp that sand or gravel does not work. Is that true?
Well, council, no, not in my opinion. What doesn't work is salt. So salt will only work from minus 10 and down, or up, however you look at it. Sand will give enough traction in most temperatures, but as you mentioned, colder it is, the harder the ice is, harder for that sand to embed. But it still offers some traction. So yeah, it's still good. It's minus 35s and 40s.
And if I may, is our gravel pre-mixed with salt?
It is 5%.
So that's why I asked that question. Maybe that's what maybe that was the thing that was, it wasn't from here, I just heard it. So when you're laying it down and we have pre-mixed gravel with salt, is there a benefit to that? If it's cold, obviously having it mixed with salt, the salt doesn't do the job, but you're adding to it and paying for it. Is there, in your opinion, Mr. Wall, if I may, sorry, in your opinion, is it worth having another storage facility for non-mixed salt?
Not for 3 to 5%.
Okay.
In the mixture.
That'll be a difference. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Howe?
And also makes it dig easier too when it's got sand or salt in it. You can
Okay.
dig it, break it, move it easier.
Okay.
And then just the size of the aggregate that we use on the roads. Like, you know, a friend of mine runs a road company down in Kamloops area, and he just mentioned to me, he said, you know, have you guys ever had the conversation about sand as compared to gravel? Like, so on the highways, they have to use a really smaller amount or size of aggregate so that you don't bust windows and stuff. Because of the high speeds, it breaks windows. In Tumbler Ridge, you know, our maximum speed's 50 kilometers an hour. Most roads are 30, right? So, you know, is there any benefit for us to go into a larger aggregate? Have we ever thought of that or discussed that?
Have they let the people doing the road to Fort St. John know about the size of aggregate they're supposed to use?
Same with Tumbler to Dawson on it.
0.5 and smaller is what it's supposed to be, but
Just knowing that
3 inches less.
around Taylor, I give people extra space because I'm tired of cracks in that windshield. But
then it's coming to the gravel pits too.
Mr. Beal?
Thank you, Mr. Wall, council. Yeah, I know the Ministry of Transportation has a spec for their highway, and they have reduced the size for that matter. So the government contractors that they use have a specific size that they require. We don't have that same spec, so ours is 2 mil minus. So it's actually
Really? That's ours. Really? Wow.
so
Okay.
it's not
It's small. It's really small.
it is. And so we use all of the material to have just a straight 2 mil. You're talking about way more money to have the screen.
Sure, for sure. The last thing is on start-stop times for our snow clearing equipment. I would assume when we have a massive snow event that we can dispatch the guys at 7 o'clock at night if a guy's available or on call or whatever. When we do our snow clearing in the mornings, particularly in front of the schools and areas like that, the way I understand the current policy, the way that works, the current way it works now is they still start at 8 o'clock in the morning at Public Works, get their work boots on, go through the safety meeting, and then start and go to work. So I've recently seen an instance where I thought that was not a great idea to have our sand trucks and plow trucks going through the school zones at between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning. Is there any way that we could talk about or look at varying the start times for possibly 1 or 2 employees to come in earlier and maybe start their shifts on those types of areas at 6 in the morning so that we don't have those conflicts?
Yeah, and that's just what you build in your policy on the service level. If you want the streets, choose your street, the street level, and you want them cleared by a certain time, then the district has the ability to vary shift schedules to meet that service level.
And that would be something that when you bring the new policy and procedure back, we'll start developing that, or you will have that kind of earmarked in there, or what?
I'll work with Mr. Beal on that, because I think we do aim to have those school areas done prior to the main traffic coming when there is a snowfall. So I'll talk to him about what's currently being done, and we will build, we can build the times into that, and council can take a look at it and adjust if you like.
Okay.
So I have a couple questions on the same scenario, and maybe if I can just get your insight or just your opinion. What's that like? So I understand the snow clearing policy is going to be there. So my philosophy on that. So what happens in the snow clearing policy? And I'm picking a date out there, but let's say October 15th to March 15th, we say that's our snowing area for Tumbler Ridge. So in that policy, we state that we want to have 2 employees in their normal shift, but it starts at 6 o'clock. Just in there, whether it snows or not, they're in it. I mean, is that something that can be added to a policy, or is that a different policy?
You want?
So I'm just saying, like, so like I know if it's going to snow, like if our dates are October 15th to March 15th.
Yeah.
History is that's when we get most, we get snow through. Maybe we don't get snow until December, but added in there that staff would have 2 people scheduled every day at 6. I mean, if there's no snow, obviously that's not giving direction. That's up staff. There maybe there's other stuff they can do, or does that hinder your staff to be able to do their job through the day?
Yeah, let me think about that.
Okay.
I'm not sure council wants to get into scheduling employees through policy, but I'm also not saying it can't be done. I'd just like to think about that.
Yeah,
and as we're building the
And
policy.
it just came up when Councillor Howe asked that, and like I said, I don't want to get into scheduling it. I'm just wondering if there's some kind of wording there you can do that. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
So the way we have it now, and I did ask Mr. Wall on the weekend while he was off, in regards to running equipment in cold weather. And I'm not talking pickup trucks or anything like that. I asked if there was a policy out there to leave our sand trucks running, our grader, our loaders. I'm just wondering if you could just oversight that one.
Yeah, we do have a policy that allows us when the temperatures get colder, and I'm not sure if it specifies a specific temperature, if it just specifies when it gets colder that employees are allowed to leave the equipment running. Otherwise, we have a no idle policy, but the no idle policy does have exceptions for cold weather. Is it a specific temperature, or is it just when it's cold, you're allowed to idle?
Yeah, once again, I'd have to check. I think there is a specific temperature. But just idling a piece of machinery doesn't necessarily warm up the whole engine, because all the hydraulic cylinders, all that hydraulic oil, they're still, depending on how cold it is, that could aerate the pump because it's not flowing fast enough to get back to the pump.
And
so there's some cautionary.
That's another thing that we don't have, and I'll speak to Mr. Beal about, and we can look at amending the vehicle policy, and that is temperatures at which we don't operate the machinery. But I think that I need to have that conversation with Mr. Beal, because their different machinery likely is safe to operate at different temperatures. So we can take a look at that before we bring it back, and it may just be that you add something to the policy saying that district staff ensures that machinery is not operating at temperatures which would lead to damage, something like that. Yeah.
So if I may, Mr. Wall, so I get the understanding from Mr. Beal in regards to leaving it running might not. So is there something that we can do as a council into a budget? Is there something that we could do to help support the new equipment you're buying? Whether it's like, I'm not an operator. Be lucky I can drive a loader, but that's farm equipment. But is there something that can be done or purchased that, not build another Kwanzaa for all this equipment, but there's stuff out there that helps these pumps and stuff that Mr. Beal just talked about? Heat blankets, I don't know. I like I said to you, I'm a farm guy. We had barns. we had barns we parked our equipment in, especially if we had to use them. So our feed alleys would have all of our tractors and our feed wagon there, so it wouldn't freeze up, our hydraulics wouldn't freeze and all that. So I'm curious, is there something out there? I mean, and I understand where we don't want to run equipment on cold weather, and that makes sense to me. And maybe we don't want to run it either because then we're doing other damage that Mr. Beal just spoke of. But is there something out there besides building a building?
I was smiling because I was going to say wash bay as soon as you finished. I mean,
Enough
yeah,
to park
I mean,
3 pieces, right?
anything that you keep equipment out of the weather, it's going to last longer. That's part of it, but there may be different other solutions that industry has, and there maybe we can take a look into seeing that, because I'm not willing to go through the wash bay debate again.
Perfect. I really appreciate that debate. So with that, that's a policy. So I know we can't make spending money here, but is that something we could bring up, or I could bring up? I mean, I don't want to do a notice motion, so I'll talk to. But to add it to the budget where that can be researched,
Yeah,
whether that's you or your other staff, but to see if there is something that we can, save the brand new grader, the brand new loaders we just bought, maybe as well as the sanding trucks. And I've been to Public Works. I know Mr. Beal's staff brings in whatever they can into their bays.
Yeah.
Totally get that, but there's something that council can help with the budgeting process to make sure we're protecting all the new equipment that the district seems, is purchasing due to their ages up. Okay. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only thing we have is left is the question and answer period, but it's 8 p.m., so we need a motion to continue the meeting on. Councillor Howe.
That motion forward.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Kirby. All in favor? Opposed? And I'll be honest, I'll speak to my opposement, is I'm not a fan of more than 3-hour meetings, but, so. Any more discussion in regards to the snow clearing policy? Okay. Question and answer. The press.
Yeah, just when you do start looking at prioritizing things, can you prioritize and get that fixed?
What's that?
Clicking.
Oh,
the fan?
The fan.
Yeah.
That's probably why it's so warm in here right now, Mr. Ernest. It's warmer than it has been
Do you
forever.
want to click and warm, or do you want it quiet and cold?
I'm trying to transcribe Doug, and he's not a very loud spoken person.
So Trent votes quiet and cold?
Yeah.
Stacy, do you have anything?
I see it says on here I can't remove this from the gallery. Can I take the Parks and Recs part of it?
You can take the whole thing.
Go. Cool.
It was impressive listening to you guys tonight. There's a lot of knowledge in this room.